It began with the day when it was almost the 5th of November, and a doubt arose in some breast, Robert's I fancy, as to the quality of the fireworks laid in for the Guy Fawkes celebration. They were jolly cheap, said whoever it was, and I think it was Robert, and suppose they didn't go off on the night. Those Prosser kids would have something to snigger about then. The ones I got are all right, Jane said. I know they are, because the man at the shop said they were worth Thribble the money. I'm sure Thribble isn't grammar, Anthea said. Of course it isn't, said Cyril. One word can't be grammar all by itself, so you needn't be so jolly clever. Anthea was rummaging in the corner drawers of her mind for a very disagreeable answer, when she remembered what a wet day it was, and how the boys had been disappointed of that ride to London and back on the top of the tram, which their mother had promised them as a reward for not having once forgotten, for 6 whole days, to wipe their boots on the mat when they came home from school. So Anthea only said, "Don't be so jolly clever yourself, squirrel, and the fireworks look all right, and you'll have the 8pence that your tram fares didn't cost today to buy something more with. You ought to get a perfectly lovely Catharine wheel for 8pence. I dare say, said Cyril coldly, but it's not your 8pence anyhow. But look here, said Robert, really now about the fireworks. We don't want to be disgraced before those kids next door. They think because they wear red plush on Sundays no one else is any good. I wouldn't wear plush if it was ever so, unless it was black to be beheaded in, if I was Mary Queen of Scots, said Anthea with scorn. Robert stuck steadily to his point. One great point about Robert is the steadiness with which he can stick. I think we ought to test them, he said. You young duffer, said Cyril. Fireworks are like postage stamps. You can only use them once. What do you suppose it means by Carter's tested seeds in the advertisement? There was a blank silence. Then Cyril touched his forehead with his finger and shook his head. A little wrong here, he said. I was always afraid of that with poor Robert. All that cleverness, you know, and being top in algebra so often, it's bound to tell. Dry up, said Robert fiercely. Don't you see? You can't test seeds if you do them all. You just take a few here and there, and if those grow, you can feel pretty sure the others will be, what do you call it? Father told me, up to sample. Don't you think we ought to sample the fireworks? Just shut our eyes and each draw one out and then try them. But it's raining cats and dogs, said Jane. And Queen Anne is dead, rejoined Robert. No one was in a very good temper. We needn't go out to do them. We can just move back the table and let them off on the old tea tray we play toboggans with. I don't know what you think, but I think it's time we did something, and that would be really useful. Because then we shouldn't just hope the fireworks would make those Prossers sit up. We should know. It would be something to do, Cyril owned with languid approval. So the table was moved back, and then the hole in the carpet that had been near the window till the carpet was turned round showed most awfully. But Anthea stole out on tiptoe and got the tray when Cook wasn't looking, and brought it in and put it over the hole. Then all the fireworks were put on the table, and each of the 4 children shut its eyes very tight and put out its hand and grasped something. Robert took a cracker, Cyril and Anthea had Roman candles, but Jane's fat paw closed on the gem of the whole collection, the jack-in-the-box that had cost 2 shillings, and one at least of the party, I will not say which, because it was sorry afterwards, declared that Jane had done it on purpose. Nobody was pleased. For the worst of it was that these 4 children, with a very proper dislike of anything even faintly bordering on the sneakish, had a law unalterable as those of the Medes and Persians, that one had to stand by the results of a toss-up, or a drawing of lots, or any other appeal to chance, however much one might happen to dislike the way things were turning out. I didn't mean to, said Jane near tears. I don't care, I'll draw another. You know jolly well you can't, said Cyril bitterly. It's settled, it's medium and Persian. You've done it and you'll have to stand by it, and us too, worse luck. Never mind. You'll have your pocket money before the 5th. Anyway, we'll have the jack-in-the-box last and get the most out of it we can. So the cracker and the Roman candles were lighted, and they were all that could be expected for the money. But when it came to the jack-in-the-box, it simply sat in the tray and laughed at them, as Cyril said. They tried to light it with paper, and they tried to light it with matches. They tried to light it with Vesuvian fusees from TH. Pocket of father's second-best overcoat that was hanging in the hall. And then Anthea slipped away to the cupboard under the stairs where the brooms and dustpans were kept, and the rosiny fire lighters that smell so nice and like the woods where pine trees grow, and the old newspapers and the beeswax and turpentine, and the horrid and stiff dark rags that are used for cleaning brass and furniture, and the paraffin for the lamps. She came back with a little pot that had once cost 7pence halfpenny when it was full of red currant jelly, but the jelly had been all eaten long ago, and now Anthea had filled the jar with paraffin. She came in, and she threw the paraffin over the tray just at the moment when Cyril was trying with the 23rd match to light the jack-in-the-box. The jack-in-the-box did not catch fire any more than usual, but the paraffin acted quite differently, and in an instant a hot flash of flame leapt up and burnt off Cyril's eyelashes, and scorched the faces of all 4 before they could spring back. They backed, in 4 instantaneous bounds as far as they could, which was to the wall, and the pillar of fire reached from floor to ceiling. "My hat," said Cyril with emotion. "You've done it this time, Anthea." The flame was spreading out under the ceiling like the rows of fire in Mr. Rider Haggard's exciting story about Alan Quatermain. Robert and Cyril saw that no time was to be lost. They turned up the edges of the carpet and kicked them over the tray. This cut off the column of fire, and it disappeared, and there was nothing left but smoke and a dreadful smell of lamps that have been turned too low. All hands now rushed to the rescue, and the paraffin fire was only a bundle of trampled carpet, when suddenly a sharp crack beneath their feet made the amateur firemen start back. Another crack. The carpet moved as if it had had a cat wrapped in it. The jack-in-the-box had at last allowed itself to be lighted, and it was going off with desperate violence inside the carpet. Robert, with the air of one doing the only possible thing, rushed to the window and opened it. Anthea screamed, Jane burst into tears, and Cyril turned the table wrong way up on top of the carpet heap. But the firework went on, banging and bursting and spluttering even underneath the table. Next moment Mother rushed in, attracted by the howls of Anthea, and in a few moments the firework desisted and there was a dead silence, and the children stood looking at each other's black faces, and out of the corners of their eyes at Mother's white one. The fact that the nursery carpet was ruined occasioned but little surprise, nor was anyone really astonished that bed should prove the immediate end of the adventure. It has been said that all roads lead to Rome. This may be true, but at any rate, in early youth I am quite sure that many roads lead to bed and stop there. Or you do. The rest of the fireworks were confiscated, and Mother was not pleased when Father let them off himself in the back garden, though he said, "Well, how else can you get rid of them, my dear?" You see, Father had forgotten that the children were in disgrace, and that their bedroom windows looked out onto the back garden, so that they all saw the fireworks most beautifully, and admired the skill with which Father handled them. Next day all was forgotten and forgiven. Only the nursery had to be deeply cleaned like spring cleaning, and the ceiling had to be whitewashed. And Mother went out, and just at tea time next day a man came with a rolled-up carpet, and Father paid him, and Mother said, "If the carpet isn't in good condition, you know, I shall expect you to change it." And the man replied, "There ain't a thread gone in it nowhere, Mum. It's a bargain if ever there was one, and I'm more'n arf sorry I let it go at the price. But we can't resist the liddies, can we, sir?" And he winked at father and went away. Then the carpet was put down in the nursery, and sure enough there wasn't a hole in it anywhere. As the last fold was unrolled, something hard and loud-sounding bumped out of it and trundled along the nursery floor. All the children scrambled for it, and Cyril got it. He took it to the gas. It was shaped like an egg, very yellow and shiny, half transparent, and it had an odd sort of light in it that changed as you held it in different ways. It was as though it was an egg with a yolk of pale fire that just showed through the stone. "I may keep it, mayn't I, Mother?" Cyril asked. And of course Mother said no. They must take it back to the man who had brought the carpet, because she had only paid for a carpet, and not for a stone egg with a fiery yolk to it. So she told them where the shop was, and it was in the Kentish Town Road, not far from the hotel that is called the Bull and Gate. It was a poky little shop, and the man was arranging furniture outside on the pavement very cunningly, so that the more broken parts should show as little as pose. Sybil, and directly he saw the children he knew them again, and he began at once, without giving them a chance to speak. "No you do," he cried loudly. "I ain't a-goin' to take back no carpets, so don't you make no bloomin' error. A bargain's a bargain, and the carpet's puffick throughout." "We don't want you to take it back," said Cyril, "but we found something in it." "It must have got into it up at your place, then," said the man with indignant promptness, "for there ain't nothing in nothing as I sell. It's all as clean as a whistle." "I never said it wasn't clean," said Cyril, "but—" "Oh, if it's moths," said the man, "that's easy cured with borax, but I expect it was only an odd one. I tell you the carpet's good through and through. It hadn't got no moths when it left my ends, not so much as in heg." "But that's just it," interrupted Jane. "There was so much as an egg." The man made a sort of rush at the children and stamped his foot. "Clear out, I say," he shouted, "or I'll call for the police. A nice thing for customers to ear you a-coming air a-charging me with finding things in goods what I sells. Air be off, afore I sends you off with a flea in your ears. Hi, constable." The children fled, and they think, and their father thinks, that they couldn't have done anything else. Mother has her own opinion. But father said they might keep the egg. "The man certainly didn't know the egg was there when he brought the carpet," said he, "any more than your mother did, and we've as much right to it as he had." So the egg was put on the mantelpiece, where it quite brightened up the dingy nursery. The nursery was dingy because it was a basement room, and its windows looked out on a stone area with a rockery made of clinkers facing the windows. Nothing grew in the rockery except London pride and snails. The room had been described in the house agent's list as a convenient breakfast room and basement, and in the daytime it was rather dark. This did not matter so much in the evenings when the gas was alight, but then it was in the evening that the blackbeetles got so sociable, and used to come out of the low cupboards on each side of the fireplace where their homes were, and try to make friends with the children. At least, I suppose that was what they wanted, but the children never would. On the 5th of November, father and mother went to the theater, and the children were not happy, because the Prossers next door had lots of fireworks and they had none. They were not even allowed to have a bonfire in the garden. "No more playing with fire, thank you," was father's answer when they asked him. When the baby had been put to bed, the children sat sadly round the fire in the nursery. "I'm beastly bored," said Robert. "Let's talk about the Sammead," said Anthea, who generally tried to give the conversation a cheerful turn. "What's the good of talking?" said Cyril. "What I want is for something to happen. It's awfully stuffy for a chap not to be allowed out in the evenings. There's simply nothing to do when you've got through your homers. Jane finished the last of her home lessons and shut the book with a bang. "We've got the pleasure of memory," said she. "Just think of last holidays." Last holidays, indeed, offered something to think of, for they had been spent in the country at a white house between a sand pit and a gravel pit, and things had happened. The children had found a sammead, or sand fairy, and it had let them have anything they wished for, just exactly anything, with no bother about its not being really for their good, or anything like that. And if you want to know what kind of things they wished for, and how their wishes turned out, you can read it all in a book called 5 Children, and it was the sammead. If you've not read it, perhaps I ought to tell you that the 5th child was the baby brother, who was called the lamb, because the first thing he ever said was "Bah," and that the other children were not particularly handsome, nor were they extra clever, nor extraordinarily good. But they were not bad sorts on the whole. In fact, they were rather like you. "I don't want to think about the pleasures of memory," said Cyril. "I want some more things to happen." "We're very much luckier than anyone else as it is," said Jane. "Why, no one else ever found a sammead. We ought to be grateful." "Why shouldn't we go on being, though?" Cyril asked. "Lucky, I mean, not grateful. Why's it all got to stop?" "Perhaps something will happen," said Anthea comfortably. "Do you know, sometimes I think we are the sort of people that things do happen to." "It's like that in history," said Jane. "Some kings are full of interesting things, and others, nothing ever happens to them except their being born and crowned and buried, and sometimes not that." "I think Panther's right," said Cyril. "I think we are the sort of people things do happen to. I have a sort of feeling things would happen right enough if we only give them a shove. It just wants something to start it, that's all." "I wish they taught magic at school," Jane sighed. "I believe if we could do a little magic it might make something happen." "I wonder how you begin." Robert looked round the room, but he got no ideas from the faded green curtains, or the drab Venetian blinds, or the worn brown oilcloth on the floor. Even the new carpet suggested nothing, though its pattern was a very wonderful one, and always seemed as though it were just going to make you think of something. "I could begin right enough," said Anthea. "I've read lots about it, but I believe it's wrong in the Bible." "It's only wrong in the Bible because people wanted to hurt other people. I don't see how things can be wrong unless they hurt somebody, and we don't want to hurt anybody, and what's more, we jolly well couldn't if we tried. Let's get the Ingoldsby legends." "There's a thing about abracadabra there," said Cyril, yawning. "We may as well play at magic. Let's be Knights Templars. They were awfully gone on magic. They used to work spells or something with a goat and a goose. Father says so." "Well, that's all right," said Robert unkindly. "You can play the goat right enough, and Jane knows how to be a goose." "I'll get Ingoldsby," said Anthea hastily. "You turn up the hearthrug." So they traced strange figures on the linoleum, where the hearthrug had kept it clean. They traced them with chalk that Robert had nicked from the top of the mathematical master's desk at school. You know, of course, that it is stealing to take a new stick of chalk, but it is not wrong to take a broken piece, so long as you only take one. I do not know the reason of this rule, nor who made it, and they chanted all the gloomiest songs they could think of, and of course, nothing happened. So then Anthea said, "I'm sure a magic fire ought to be made of sweet-smelling wood, and have magic gums and essences and things in it." "I don't know any sweet-smelling wood except cedar," said Robert, "but I've got some ends of cedar wood lead pencil." So they burned the ends of lead pencil, and still nothing happened. "Let's burn some of the eucalyptus oil we have for our colds," said Anthea. And they did. It certainly smelt very strong, and they burned lumps of camphor out of the big chest. It was very bright and made a horrid black smoke which looked very magical, but still nothing happened. Then they got some clean tea cloths from the dresser drawer in the kitchen and waved them over the magic chalk tracings and sang the hymn of the Moravian nuns at Bethlehem, which is very impressive. And still nothing happened. So they waved more and more wildly, and Robert's tea cloth caught the golden egg and whisked it off the mantelpiece, and it fell into the fender and rolled under the grate. "Oh, crikey," said more than one voice. And everyone instantly fell down flat on its front to look under the grate, and there lay the egg, glowing in a nest of hot ashes. "It's not smashed anyhow," said Robert, and he put his hand under the grate and picked up the egg. But the egg was much hotter than anyone would have believed it could possibly get in such a short time, and Robert had to drop it with a cry of bother. It fell on the top bar of the grate and bounced right into the glowing, red-hot heart of the fire. "The tongs!" cried Anthea. But alas, no one could remember where they were. Everyone had forgotten that the tongs had last been used to fish up the doll's teapot from the bottom of the water butt, where the lamb had dropped it. So the nursery tongs were resting between the water butt and the dustbin, and Cook refused to lend the kitchen ones. "Never mind," said Robert. "We'll get it out with the poker and the shovel." "Oh, stop," cried Anthea. "Look at it, look, look, look. I do believe something is going to happen." For the egg was now red hot, and inside it something was moving. Next moment there was a soft cracking sound. The egg burst in two, and out of it came a flame-colored bird. It rested a moment among the flames, and as it rested there, the 4 children could see it growing bigger and bigger under their eyes. Every mouth was agape, every eye agoggle. The bird rose in its nest of fire, stretched its wings, and flew out into the room. It flew round and round and round again, and where it passed the air was warm. Then it perched on the fender. The children looked at each other. Then Cyril put out a hand towards the bird. It put its head on one side and looked up at him, as you may have seen a parrot do when it is just going to speak, so that the children were hardly astonished at all when it said, "Be careful, I am not nearly cool yet." They were not astonished, but they were very, very much interested. They looked at the bird, and it was certainly worth looking at. Its feathers were like gold. It was about as large as a bantam, only its beak was not at all bantam-shaped. "I believe I know." What it is," said Robert. "I've seen a picture." He hurried away. A hasty dash and scramble among the papers on Father's study table yielded, as the sum books say, the desired result. But when he came back into the room holding out a paper and crying, "I say, look here," the others all said, "Hush." And he hushed obediently and instantly, for the bird was speaking. "Which of you," it was saying, "put the egg into the fire?" "He did," said 3 voices, and 3 fingers pointed at Robert. The bird bowed. At least it was more like that than anything else. "I am your grateful debtor," it said with a high-bred air. The children were all choking with wonder and curiosity, all except Robert. He held the paper in his hand, and he knew. He said so. He said, "I know who you are." And he opened and displayed a printed paper, at the head of which was a little picture of a bird sitting in a nest of flames. "You are the phoenix," said Robert, and the bird was quite pleased. "My fame has lived then for 2,000 years, it said. "Allow me to look at my portrait." It looked at the page which Robert, kneeling down, spread out in the fender and said, "It's not a flattering likeness. And what are these characters?" it asked, pointing to the printed part. "Oh, that's all dullish. It's not much about you, you know," said Cyril with unconscious politeness. "But you're in lots of books." "With portraits?" asked the phoenix. "Well, no," said Cyril. "In fact, I don't think I ever saw any portrait of you but that one, but I can read you something about yourself if you like." The phoenix nodded, and Cyril went off and fetched volume X of the old encyclopedia, and on page 246 he found the following: "Phoenix in ornithology, A fabulous bird of antiquity. Antiquity is quite correct, said the phoenix, but fabulous, well do I look it. Everyone shook its head. Cyril went on. The ancients speak of this bird as single, or the only one of its kind. That's right enough, said the phoenix. They describe it as about the size of an eagle. Eagles are of different sizes, said the phoenix. It's not at all a good description. All the children were kneeling on the hearthrug, to be as near the phoenix as possible. You'll boil your brains, it said. Look out, I'm nearly cool now. And with a whir of golden wings, it fluttered from the fender to the table. It was so nearly cool that there was only a very faint smell of burning when it had settled itself on the tablecloth. It's only a very little scorched, said the phoenix apologetically. It will come out in the wash. Please go on reading. The children gathered round the table. The size of an eagle, Cyril went on. Its head finely crested with a beautiful plumage, its neck covered with feathers of a gold color, and the rest of its body purple, only the tail white, and the eyes sparkling like stars. They say that it lives about 500 years in the wilderness, and when advanced in age it builds itself a pile of sweet wood and aromatic gums, fires it with the wafting of its wings, and thus burns itself, and that from its ashes arises a worm, which in time grows up to be a phoenix. Hence the Phoenicians gave. Never mind what they gave, said the phoenix, ruffling its golden feathers. They never gave much anyway. They always were people who gave nothing for nothing. That book ought to be destroyed. It's most inaccurate. The rest of my body was never purple, and as for my tail, well, I simply ask you, is it white? It turned round and gravely presented its golden tail to the children. No, it's not, said everybody. No, and it never was, said the phoenix. And that about the worm is just a vulgar insult. The phoenix has an egg like all respectable birds. It makes a pile, that part's all right, and it lays its egg and it burns itself. And it goes to sleep and wakes up in its egg and comes out and goes on living again and so on forever and ever. I can't tell you how weary I got of it, such a restless existence. No repose. But how did your egg get here? Asked Anthea. Ah, that's my life secret, said the phoenix. I couldn't tell it to anyone who wasn't really sympathetic. I've always been a misunderstood bird. You can tell that by what they say about the worm. I might tell you, it went on, looking at Robert with eyes that were indeed starry. You put me on the fire. Robert looked uncomfortable. The rest of us made the fire of sweet-scented woods and gums, though, said Cyril. And it was an accident my putting you on the fire, said Robert, telling the truth with some difficulty, for he did not know how the phoenix might take it. It took it in the most unexpected manner. Your candid avowal, it said, removes my last scruple. I will tell you my story. And you won't vanish or anything sudden, will you? Asked Anthea anxiously. Why, it asked, puffing out the golden feathers, do you wish me to stay here? Oh yes, said everyone with unmistakable sincerity. Why? Asked the phoenix again, looking modestly at the tablecloth. Because, said everyone at once and then stopped short. Only Jane added after a pause, you are the most beautiful person we've ever seen. You are a sensible child, said the phoenix, and I will not vanish or anything sudden, and I will tell you my tale. I had resided, as your book says, for many thousand years in the wilderness, which is a large, quiet place with very little really good society, and I was becoming weary of the monotony of my existence. But I acquired the habit of laying my egg and burning myself every 500 years, and you know how difficult it is to break yourself of a habit. Yes, said Cyril, Jane used to bite her nails. But I broke myself of it, urged Jane, rather hurt. You know I did. Not till they put bitter aloes on them, said Cyril. I doubt, said the bird gravely, whether even bitter aloes, the aloe, by the way, has a bad habit of its own, which it might well cure before seeking to cure others. I allude to its indolent practice of flowering but once a century. I doubt whether even bitter aloes could have cured me. But I was cured. I awoke one morning from a feverish dream. It was getting near the time for me to lay that tiresome fire and lay that tedious egg upon it, and I saw two people, a man and a woman. They were sitting on a carpet, and when I accosted them civilly, they narrated to me their life story, which, as you have not yet heard it, I will now proceed to relate. They were a prince and princess, and the story of their parents was one which I am sure you will like to hear. In early youth, the mother of the princess happened to hear the story of a certain enchanter, and in that story I am sure you will be interested. The enchanter. Oh, please don't, said Anthea. I can't understand all these beginnings of stories, and you seem to be getting deeper and deeper in them every minute. Do tell us your own story. That's what we really want to hear. Well, said the phoenix, seeming on the whole rather flattered, to cut about 70 long stories short, though I had to listen to them all. But to be sure, in the wilderness there is plenty of time. This prince and princess were so fond of each other that they did not want anyone else, and the enchanter, don't be alarmed, I won't go into his history, had given them a magic carpet. You've heard of a magic carpet. And they had just sat on it and told it to take them right away from everyone, and it had brought them to the wilderness. And as they meant to stay there, they had no further use for the carpet, so they gave it to me. That was indeed the chance of a lifetime. I don't see what you wanted with a carpet, said Jane, when you've got those lovely wings. They are nice wings, aren't they? Said the phoenix, simpering and spreading them out. Well, I got the prince to lay out the carpet, and I laid my egg on it. Then I said to the carpet, now, my excellent carpet, prove your worth. Take that egg somewhere where it can't be hatched for 2,000 years, and where, when that time's up, someone will light a fire of sweet wood and aromatic gums and put the egg in to hatch. And you see, it's all come out exactly as I said. The words were no sooner out of my beak than egg and carpet disappeared. The royal lovers assisted to arrange my pile and soothed my last moments. I burnt myself up and knew no more till I awoke on yonder altar. It pointed its claw at the grate. But the carpet, said Robert, the magic carpet that takes you anywhere you wish, what became of that? Oh, that, said the phoenix carelessly. I should say that that is the carpet. I remember the pattern perfectly. It pointed as it spoke to the floor, where lay the carpet which mother had bought in the Kentish town road for 22 shillings and 9pence. At that instant father's latchkey was heard in the door. "Oh-h," whispered Cyril, "now we shall catch it for not being in bed." "Wish yourself there," said the phoenix in a hurried whisper, "and then wish the carpet back in its place." No sooner said than done. It made one a little giddy, certainly, and a little breathless. But when things seemed right way up again, there the children were, in bed, and the lights were out. They heard the soft voice of the phoenix through the darkness. "I shall sleep on the cornice above your curtains," it said. "Please don't mention me to your kinsfolk." "Not much good," said Robert. "They'd never believe us. I say," he called through the half-open door to the girls, "talk about adventures and things happening. We ought to be able to get some fun out of a magic carpet and a phoenix." "Rather," said the girls in bed. "Children," said father on the stairs, "go to sleep at once. What do you mean by talking at this time of night?" No answer was expected to this question, but under the bedclothes Cyril murmured one. "Mean," he said. "Don't know what we mean. I don't know W. Hat anything means." "But we've got a magic carpet and a phoenix," said Robert. "You'll get something else if father comes in and catches you," said Cyril. "Shut up, I tell you." Robert shut up, but he knew as well as you do that the adventures of that carpet and that phoenix were only just beginning. Father and mother had not the least idea of what had happened in their absence. This is often the case, even when there are no magic carpets or phoenixes in the house. The next morning, but I am sure you would rather wait till the next chapter before you hear about that. Chapter 2, The Topless Tower. The children had seen the phoenix egg hatched in the flames in their own nursery grate, and had heard from it how the carpet on their own nursery floor was really the wishing carpet, which would take them anywhere they chose. The carpet had transported them to bed just at the right moment, and the phoenix had gone to roost on the cornice supporting the window curtains of the boys' room. "Excuse me," said a gentle voice, and a courteous beak opened very kindly and delicately the right eye of Cyril. "I hear the slaves below preparing food. Awaken, a word of explanation and arrangement. I do wish you wouldn't." The phoenix stopped speaking and fluttered away crossly to the cornice bowl, for Cyril had hid out, as boys do when they are awakened suddenly, and the phoenix was not used to boys, and his feelings, if not his wings, were hurt. "Sorry," said Cyril, coming awake all in a minute. "Do come back. What was it you were saying? Something about bacon and rations." The phoenix fluttered back to the brass rail at the foot of the bed. "I say you are real," said Cyril. "How ripping, and the carpet." "The carpet is as real as it ever was," said the phoenix, rather contemptuously. "But of course, a carpet's only a carpet, whereas a phoenix is superlatively a phoenix." "Yes, indeed," said Cyril, "I see it is. Oh, what luck, wake up Bobs, there's jolly well something to wake up for today, and it's Saturday too." "I've been reflecting," said the phoenix, "during the silent watches of the night, and I could not avoid the conclusion that you were quite insufficiently astonished at my appearance yesterday. The ancients were always very surprised. Did you, by chance, expect my egg to hatch?" "Not us," Cyril said. "And if we had," said Anthea, who had come in her nightie when she heard the silvery voice of the phoenix, "we could never have expected it to hatch anything so splendid as you." The bird smiled. "Perhaps you've never seen a bird smile." "You see," said Anthea, wrapping herself in the boy's counterpane, for the morning was chill, "we've had things happen to us before." And she told the story of the Samide, or sand fairy. "Ah yes," said the phoenix, "Samides were rare even in my time. I remember I used to be called the Samide of the desert. I was always having compliments paid me. I can't think why." "Can you give wishes then?" asked Jane, who had now come in too. "Oh dear me, no," said the phoenix contemptuously, "at least, but I hear footsteps approaching. I hastened to conceal myself." And it did. I think I said that this day was Saturday. It was also Cook's birthday, and Mother had allowed her and Eliza to go to the Crystal Palace with a party of friends. So Jane and Anthea, of course, had to help to make beds and to wash up the breakfast cups, and little things like that. Robert and Cyril intended to spend the morning in conversation with the phoenix, but the bird had its own ideas about this. "I must have an hour or two's quiet," it said. "I really must. My nerves will give way unless I can get a little rest. You must remember it's 2,000 years since I had any conversation. I'm out of practice, and I must take care of myself. I've often been told that mine is a valuable life." So it nestled down inside an old hatbox of Father's, which had been brought down from the box room some days before, when a helmet was suddenly needed for a game of tournaments, with its golden head under its golden wing, and went to sleep. So then Robert and Cyril moved the table back and were going to sit on the carpet and wish themselves somewhere else. But before they could decide on the place, Cyril said, "I don't know. Perhaps it's rather sneakish to begin without the girls." "They'll be all the morning," said Robert impatiently. And then a thing inside him, which tiresome books sometimes call the inward monitor, said, "Why don't you help them then?" Cyril's inward monitor happened to say the same thing at the same moment, so the boys went and helped to wash up the teacups and to dust the drawing room. Robert was so interested that he proposed to clean the front doorsteps, a thing he had never been allowed to do, nor was he allowed to do it on this occasion. One reason was that it had already been done by Cook. When all the housework was finished, the girls dressed the happy, wriggling baby in his blue high G.H. Wayman coat and three-cornered hat, and kept him amused while Mother changed her dress and got ready to take him over to Granny's. Mother always went to Granny's every Saturday, and generally some of the children went with her. But today, they were to keep house, and their hearts were full of joyous and delightful feelings every time they remembered that the house they would have to keep had a phoenix in it and a wishing carpet. You can always keep the lamb good and happy for quite a long time if you play the Noah's Ark game with him. It is quite simple. He just sits on your lap and tells you what animal he is, and then you say the little poetry piece about whatever animal he chooses to be. Of course, some of the animals, like the zebra and the tiger, haven't got any poetry because they are so difficult to rhyme to. The lamb knows quite well which are the poetry animals. "I'm a baby bear," said the lamb, snugging down, and Anthea began. "I love my little baby bear. I love his nose and toes and hair. I like to hold him in my arm and keep him very safe and warm." And when she said very, of course there was a real bear's hug. Then came the eel, and the lamb was tickled till he wriggled exactly like a real one. "I love my little baby eel. He is so squidgelty to feel. He'll be an eel when he is big. But now he's just a tiny snig. Perhaps you didn't know that a snig was a baby eel. It is, though, and the lamb knew it. "Hedgehog now," he said, and Anthea went on. "My baby hedgehog, how I like ye. Though your back is so prickly spiky. Your front is very soft, I've found. So I must love you front ways round." And then she loved him front ways round, while he squealed with pleasure. It is a very baby game, and of course, the rhymes are only meant for very, very small people, not for people who are old enough to read books, so I won't tell you any more of them. By the time the lamb had been a baby lion and a baby weasel, and a baby rabbit and a baby rat, Mother was ready, and she and the lamb, having been kissed by everybody and hugged as thoroughly as it is possible to be when you're dressed for out of doors, were seen to the tram by the boys. When the boys came back, everyone looked at everyone else and said, "Now." They locked the front door and they locked the back door, and they fastened all the windows. They moved the table and chairs off the carpet, and Anthea swept it. "We must show it a little attention," she said kindly. "We'll give it tea leaves next time. Carpets like tea leaves." Then everyone put on its outdoor things, because as Cyril said, they didn't know where they might be going, and it makes people stare if you go out of doors in November in pinafores and without hats. Then Robert gently awoke the phoenix, who yawned and stretched itself, and allowed Robert to lift it onto the middle of the carpet, where it instantly went to sleep again with its crested head tucked under its golden wing as before. Then everyone sat down on the carpet. "Where shall we go?" was of course the question, and it was warmly discussed. Anthea wanted to go to Japan. Robert and Cyril voted for America, and Jane wished to go to the seaside. "Because there are donkeys there," said she. "Not in November, silly," said Cyril, and the discussion got warmer and warmer, and still nothing was settled. "I vote we let the phoenix decide," said Robert at last, so they stroked it till it woke. "We want to go somewhere abroad," they said, "and we can't make up our minds where." "Let the carpet make up its mind if it has one," said the phoenix. "Just say you wish to go abroad." So they did, And the next moment the world seemed to spin upside down, and when it was right way up again and they were ungiddy enough to look about them, they were out of doors. Out of doors. This is a feeble way to express where they were. They were out of the earth or off it. In fact, they were floating steadily, safely, splendidly in the crisp, clear air, with the pale, bright blue of the sky above them, and far down below the pale, bright, sun-diamonded waves of the sea. The carpet had stiffened itself somehow, so that it was square and firm like a raft, and it steered itself so beautifully and kept on its way so flat and fearless that no one was at all afraid of tumbling off. In front of them lay land. "The coast of France," said the phoenix, waking up and pointing with its wing. "Where do you wish to go? I should always keep one wish, of course, for emergencies. Otherwise you may get into an emergency from which you can't emerge at all." But the children were far too deeply interested to listen. "I tell you what," said Cyril, "let's let the thing go on, and when we see a place we really want to stop at, why, we'll just stop. Isn't this ripping?" "It's like trains," said Anthea, as they swept over the low-lying coastline and held a steady course above orderly fields and straw. White roads bordered with poplar trees, like express trains. Only in trains you never can see anything because of grown-ups wanting the windows shut. And then they breathe on them and it's like ground glass, and nobody can see anything, and then they go to sleep. "It's like tobogganing," said Robert. "So fast and smooth, only there's no doormat to stop short on. It goes on and on." "You darling phoenix," said Jane. "It's all you're doing. Oh, look at that ducky little church and the women with flappy cappy things on their heads." "Don't mention it," said the phoenix with sleepy politeness. "Oh," said Cyril, summing up all the rapture that was in every heart. "Look at it all, look at it, and think of the Kentish town road." Everyone looked and everyone thought, and the glorious, gliding, smooth, steady rush went on, and they looked down on strange and beautiful things, and held their breath and let it go in deep sighs and said, "Oh," and "Ah," till it was long past dinner time. It was Jane who suddenly said, "I wish we'd brought that jam tart and cold mutton with us. It would have been jolly to have a picnic in the air." The jam tart and cold mutton were, however, far away, sitting quietly in the larder of the house in Camden Town, which the children were supposed to be keeping. A mouse was at that moment tasting the outside of the raspberry jam part of the tart. She had nibbled a sort of gulf, or bay, through the pastry edge, to see whether it was the sort of dinner she could ask her little mouse husband to sit down to. She had had a very good dinner herself. It is an ill wind that blows nobody any good. "We'll stop as soon as we see a nice place," said Anthea. "I've got threepence, and you boys have the fourpence each that your trams didn't cost the other day, so we can buy things to eat. I expect the phoenix can speak French." The carpet was sailing along over rocks and rivers and trees and towns and farms and fields. It reminded everybody of a certain time when all of them had had wings, and had flown up to the top of a church tower, and had had a feast there of chicken and tongue and new bread and soda water. And this again reminded them how hungry they were. And just as they were all being reminded of this very strongly indeed, they saw ahead of them some ruined walls on a hill, and strong and upright and really, to look at, as good as new, a great square tower. "The top of that's just the exactly same size as the carpet," said Jane. "I think it would be good to go to the top of that, because then none of the Abbey what's-its-names, I mean natives, would be able to take the carpet away even if they wanted to. And some of us could go out and get things to eat, buy them honestly, I mean, not take them out of larder windows." "I think it would be better if we went," Anthea was beginning, but Jane suddenly clenched her hands. "I don't see why I should never do anything I want, just because I'm the youngest. I wish the carpet would fit itself in at the top of that tower, so there." The carpet made a disconcerting bound, and next moment it was hovering above the square top of the tower. Then slowly and carefully it began to sink under them. It was like a lift going down with you at the Army and Navy stores. "I don't think we ought to wish things without all agreeing to them first," said Robert huffishly. "Hullo, what on earth?" For unexpectedly and grayly something was coming up all round the four sides of the carpet. It was as if a wall were being built by magic quickness. It was a foot high. It was 2 feet high, 3, 4, 5. It was shutting out the light more and more. Anthea looked up at the sky, and the walls that now rose 6 feet above them. "We're dropping into the tower," she screamed. There wasn't any top to it, so the carpet's going to fit itself in at the bottom. Robert sprang to his feet. "We ought to have, hullo, an owl's nest." He put his knee on a jutting smooth piece of gray stone and reached his hand into a deep window slit, broad to the inside of the tower and narrowing like a funnel to the outside. "Look sharp," cried everyone, but Robert did not look sharp enough. By the time he had drawn his hand out of the owl's nest, there were no eggs there. The carpet had sunk 8 feet below him. "Jump, you silly cuckoo," cried Cyril with brotherly anxiety. But Robert couldn't turn round all in a minute into a jumping position. He wriggled and twisted and got onto the broad ledge, and by the time he was ready to jump, the walls of the tower had risen up 30 feet above the others, who were still sinking with the carpet, and Robert found himself in the embrasure of a window, alone, for even the owls were not at home that day. The wall was smoothish. There was no climbing up, and as for climbing down, Robert hid his face in his hands and squirmed back and back from the giddy verge, until the back part of him was wedged quite tight in the narrowest part of the window slit. He was safe now, of course. But the outside part of his window was like a frame to a picture of part of the other side of the tower. It was very pretty, with moss growing between the stones and little shiny gems, but between him and it, there was the width of the tower, and nothing in it but empty air. The situation was terrible. Robert saw in a flash that the carpet was likely to bring them into just the same sort of tight places that they used to get into with the wishes the Sammied granted them. And the others, imagine their feelings as the carpet sank slowly and steadily to the very bottom of the tower, leaving Robert clinging to the wall. Robert did not even try to imagine their feelings. He had quite enough to do with his own, but you can. As soon as the carpet came to a stop on the ground at the bottom of the inside of the tower, it suddenly lost that raft-like stiffness which had been such a comfort during the journey from Camden Town to the topless tower, and spread itself limply over the loose stones and little earthy mounds at the bottom of the tower, just exactly like any ordinary carpet. Also it shrank suddenly, so that it seemed to draw away from under their feet, and they stepped quickly off the edges and stood on the firm ground, while the carpet drew itself in till it was its proper size, and no longer fitted exactly into the inside of the tower, but left quite a big space all round it. Then across the carpet they looked at each other, and then every chin was tilted up and every eye sought vainly to see where poor Robert had got to. Of course, they couldn't see him. "I wish we hadn't come," said Jane. "You always do," said Cyril briefly. "Look here, we can't leave Robert up there. I wish the carpet would fetch him down." The carpet seemed to awake from a dream and pull itself together. It stiffened itself briskly and floated up between the 4 walls of the tower. The children below craned their heads back and nearly broke their necks in doing it. The carpet rose and rose. It hung poised darkly above them for an anxious moment or two. Then it dropped down again, threw itself on the uneven floor of the tower, and as it did so, it tumbled Robert out on the uneven floor of the tower. "Oh, glory," said Robert, "that was a squeak. You don't know how I felt. I say, I've had about enough for a bit. Let's wish ourselves at home again and have a go at that jam tart and mutton. We can go out again afterwards." "Right-o," said everyone, for the adventure had shaken the nerves of all. So they all got onto the carpet again and said, "I wish we were at home." And lo and behold, they were no more at home than before. The carpet never moved. The phoenix had taken the opportunity to go to sleep. Anthea woke it up gently. "Look here," she said. "I'm looking," said the phoenix. "We wish to be at home and we're still here," complained Jane. "No," said the phoenix, looking about it at the high dark walls of the tower. "No, I quite see that." "But we wish to be at home," said Cyril. "No doubt," said the bird politely. "And the carpet hasn't moved an inch," said Robert. "No," said the phoenix, "I see it hasn't. But I thought it was a wishing carpet." "So it is," said the phoenix. "Then why?" asked the children all together. "I did tell you, you know," said the phoenix. "Only you are so fond of listening to the music of your own voices. It is, indeed, the most lovely music to each of us, and therefore—" "You did tell us what?" interrupted and exasperated. "Why, that the carpet only gives you 3 wishes a day, and you've had them." There was a heartfelt silence. "Then how are we going to get home?" said Cyril at last. "I haven't any idea," replied the phoenix kindly. "Can I fly out and get you any little thing?" "How could you carry the money to pay for it?" "It isn't necessary. Birds always take what they want. It is not regarded as stealing, except in the case of magpies." The children were glad to find they had been right in supposing this to be the case, on the day when they had wings, and had enjoyed somebody else's ripe plums. "Yes, let the phoenix get us something to eat anyway," Robert urged. "If it will be so kind, you mean," corrected Anthea in a whisper. "If it will be so kind and we can be thinking while it's gone." So the phoenix fluttered up through the gray space of the tower and vanished at the top, and it was not till it had quite gone that Jane said, "Suppose it never comes back." It was not a pleasant thought, and though Anthea at once said, "Of course it will come back. I'm certain it's a bird of its word," a further gloom was cast by the idea. For curiously enough, there was no door to the tower, and all the windows were far, far too high to be reached by the most adventurous climber. It was cold, too, and Anthea shivered. "Yes," said Cyril, "it's like being at the bottom of a well." The children waited in a sad and hungry silence, and got little stiff necks with holding their little heads back to look up the inside of the tall gray tower to see if the phoenix were coming. At last it came. It looked very big as it fluttered down between the walls, and as it neared them the children saw that its bigness was caused by a basket of boiled chestnuts which it carried in one claw. In the other it held a piece of bread, and in its beak was a very large pear. The pear was juicy and as good as a very small drink. When the meal was over, everyone felt better, and the question of how to get home was discussed without any disagreeableness. But no one could think of any way out of the difficulty, or even out of the tower, for the phoenix, though its beak and claws had fortunately been strong enough to carry food for them, was plainly not equal to flying through the air with 4 well-nourished children. "We must stay here, I suppose," said Robert at last, "and shout out every now and then, and someone will hear us and bring ropes and ladders and rescue us like out of mines. And they'll get up a subscription to send us home, like castaways." "Yes, but we shan't be home before Mother is, and then Father'll take away the carpet and say it's dangerous or something," said Cyril. "I do wish we hadn't come," said Jane. And everyone else said, "Shut up," except Anthea, who suddenly awoke the phoenix and said, "Look here, I believe you can help us. Oh, I do wish you would." "I will help you as far as lies in my power," said the phoenix at once. "What is it you want now?" "Why, we want to get home," said everyone. "Oh," said the phoenix. Yes, home, you said, meaning where we live, where we slept last night, where the altar is that your egg was hatched on." "Oh, there," said the phoenix. "Well, I'll do my best." It fluttered onto the carpet and walked up and down for a few minutes in deep thought. Then it drew itself up proudly. "I can't help you," it said. "I am almost sure I can help you. Unless I am grossly deceived, I can help you. You won't mind my leaving you for an hour or two." And without waiting for a reply, it soared up through the dimness of the tower into the brightness above. "Now," said Cyril firmly, "it said an hour or two. But I've read about captives and people shut up in dungeons and catacombs and things awaiting release, and I know each moment is an eternity. Those people always do something to pass the desperate moments. It's no use our trying to tame spiders because we shan't have time." "I hope not," said Jane doubtfully. "But we ought to scratch our names on the stones or something." "I say, talking of stones," said Robert, "you see that heap of stones against the wall over in that corner? Well, I'm certain there's a hole in the wall there, and I believe it's a door. Yes, look here. The stones are round like an arch in the wall, and here's the hole. It's all black inside." He had walked over to the heap as he spoke and climbed up to it, dislodged the top stone of the heap, and uncovered a little dark space. Next moment, everyone was helping to pull down the heap of stones, and very soon everyone threw off its jacket, for it was warm work. "It is a door," said Cyril, wiping his face, "and not a bad thing either if—" He was going to add, "if anything happens to the phoenix," but he didn't for fear of frightening Jane. He was not an unkind boy when he had leisure to think of such things. The arched hole in the wall grew larger and larger. It was very, very black, even compared with the sort of twilight at the bottom of the tower. It grew larger because the children kept pulling off the stones and throwing them down into another heap. The stones must have been there a very long time, for they were covered with moss, and some of them were stuck together by it. So it was fairly hard work, as Robert pointed out. When the hole reached to about halfway between the top of the arch and the tower, Robert and Cyril let themselves down cautiously on the inside and lit matches. How thankful they felt then that they had a sensible father who did not forbid them to carry matches, as some boys' fathers do. The father of Robert and Cyril only insisted on the matches being of the kind that strike only on the box. "It's not a door, it's a sort of tunnel," Robert cried to the girls after the first match had flared up, flickered, and gone out. "Stand off, we'll push some more stones down." They did amid deep excitement, and now the stone heap was almost gone, and before them the girls saw the dark archway leading to unknown things. All doubts and fears as to getting home were forgotten in this thrilling moment. It was like Monte Cristo, it was like— "I say," cried Anthea suddenly, "come out. There's always bad air in places that have been shut up. It makes your torches go out and then you die. It's called fire damp, I believe. Come out, I tell you." The urgency of her tone actually brought the boys out, and then everyone took up its jacket and fanned the dark arch with it, so as to make the air fresh inside. When Anthea thought the air inside must be freshened by now, Cyril led the way into the arch. The girls followed, and Robert came last, because Jane refused to tail the procession lest something should come in after her and catch at her from behind. Cyril advanced cautiously, lighting match after match and peering before him. "It's a vaulting roof," he said, "and it's all stone. All right, Panther, don't keep pulling at my jacket. The air must be all right because of the matches, silly, and look out, there are steps down." "Oh, don't let's go any farther," said Jane, in an agony of reluctance, a very painful thing, by the way, to be in. I'm sure there are snakes or dens of lions or something. Do let's go back and come some other time with candles and bellows for the fire damp." "Let me get in front of you then," said the stern voice of Robert from behind. "This is exactly the place for buried treasure, and I'm going on anyway. You can stay behind if you like." And then, of course, Jane consented to go on. So, very slowly and carefully, the children went down the steps. There were 17 of them. And at the bottom of the steps were more passages branching 4 ways, and a sort of low arch on the right-hand side made Cyril wonder what it could be, for it was too low to be the beginning of another passage. So he knelt down and lit a match, and stooping very low he peeped in. "There's something," he said, and reached out his hand. It touched something that felt more like a damp bag of marbles than anything else that Cyril had ever touched. "I believe it is a buried treasure," he cried. And it was, for even as Anthea cried, "Oh, hurry up, squirrel, fetch it out," Cyril pulled out a rotting canvas bag, about as big as the paper ones the greengrocer gives you with Barcelona nuts in for 6 pence. "There's more of it, a lot more," he said. As he pulled, the rotten bag gave way, and the gold coins ran and span and jumped and bumped and chinked and clinked on the floor of the dark passage. "I wonder what you would say if you suddenly came upon a buried treasure." What Cyril said was, "Oh, bother, I've burnt my fingers." And as he spoke, he dropped the match. "And it was the last," he added. There was a moment of desperate silence. Then Jane began to cry. "Don't," said Anthea, "don't, pussy. You'll exhaust the air if you cry. We can get out all right." "Yes," said Jane through her sobs, "and find the phoenix has come back and gone away again, because it thought we'd gone home some other way, and, oh, I wish we hadn't come." Everyone stood quite still. Only Anthea cuddled Jane up to her and tried to wipe her eyes in the dark. "Don't," said Jane. "That's my ear. I'm not crying with my ears." "Come, let's get on out," said Robert. But that was not so easy, for no one could remember exactly which way they had come. It is very difficult to remember things in the dark unless you have matches with you, and then of course it is quite different even if you don't strike one. Everyone had come to agree with Jane's constant wish, and despair was making the darkness blacker than ever, when quite suddenly the floor seemed to tip up, and a strong sensation of being in a whirling lift came upon everyone. All eyes were closed. One's eyes always are in the dark, don't you think? When the whirling feeling stopped, Cyril said, "Earthquakes," and they all opened their eyes. They were in their own dingy breakfast room at home, and oh, how light and bright and safe and pleasant and altogether delightful it seemed after that dark underground tunnel. The carpet lay on the floor, looking as calm as though it had never been for an excursion in its life. On the mantelpiece stood the phoenix, waiting with an air of modest yet sterling worth for the thanks of the children. "But how did you do it?" they asked, when everyone had thanked the phoenix again and again. "Oh, I just went and got a wish from your friend the Sammead." "But how did you know where to find it?" "I found that out from the carpet. These wishing creatures always know all about each other. They're so clannish. Like the Scots, you know, all related." "But the carpet can't talk, can it?" "No." "Then how? How did I get the Sammead's address? I tell you I got it from the carpet." "Did it speak then?" "No," said the phoenix thoughtfully. "It didn't speak, but I gathered my information from something in its manner. I was always a singularly observant bird." It was not till after the cold mutton and the jam tart, as well as the tea and bread and butter, that any one found time to regret the golden treasure which had been left scattered on the floor of the underground passage, and which, indeed, no one had thought of till now, since the moment when Cyril burnt his fingers at the flame of the last match. "What owls and goats we were," said Robert. "Look how we've always wanted treasure, and now—" "Never mind," said Anthea, trying as usual to make the best of it. "We'll go be. Ack again and get it all, and then we'll give everybody presents." More than a quarter of an hour passed most agreeably in arranging what presents should be given to whom, and when the claims of generosity had been satisfied, the talk ran for 50 minutes on what they would buy for themselves. It was Cyril who broke in on Robert's almost too technical account of the motor car, on which he meant to go to and from school. "There," he said, "dry up, it's no good. We can't ever go back, we don't know where it is." "Don't you know?" Jane asked the Phoenix wistfully. "Not in the least," the Phoenix replied, in a tone of amiable regret. "Then we've lost the treasure," said Cyril, and they had. "But we've got the carpet and the Phoenix," said Anthea. "Excuse me," said the bird, with an air of wounded dignity. "I do so hate to seem to interfere, but surely you must mean the Phoenix and the carpet." Chapter 3. The Queen Cook. It was on a Saturday that the children made their first glorious journey on the wishing carpet. Unless you are too young to read at all, you will know that the next day must have been Sunday. Sunday at 18, Camden Terrace, Camden Town, was always a very pretty day. Father always brought home flowers on Saturday so that the breakfast table was extra beautiful. In November, of course, the flowers were chrysanthemums, yellow and coppery colored. Then there were always sausages on toast for breakfast, and these are rapture after 6 days of Kentish Town Road eggs at 14 a shilling. On this particular Sunday there were fowls for dinner, a kind of food that is generally kept for birthdays and grand occasions, and there was an angel pudding, when rice and milk and oranges and white icing do their best to make you happy. After dinner Father was very sleepy indeed because he had been working hard all the week, but he did not yield to the voice that said, "Go and have an hour's rest." He nursed the lamb, who had a horrid cough that cook said was whooping cough as sure as eggs, and he said, "Come along, kiddies. I've got a ripping book from the library called The Golden Age, and I'll read it to you." Mother settled herself on the drawing-room sofa and said she could listen quite nicely with her eyes shut. The lamb snugged into the armchair corner of Daddy's arm, and the others got into a happy heap on the hearthrug. At first, of course, there were too many feet and knees and shoulders and elbows, but real comfort was actually settling down on them, and the Phoenix and the carpet were put away on the back top shelf of their minds, beautiful things that could be taken out and played with later, when a surly solid knock came at the drawing-room door. It opened an angry inch, and the cook's voice said, "Please, M, may I speak to you a moment?" Mother looked at Father with a desperate expression. Then she put her pretty sparkly Sunday shoes down from the sofa and stood up in them and sighed. "As good fish in the sea," said Father cheerfully, and it was not till much later that the children understood what he meant. Mother went out into the passage, which is called the hall, where the umbrella stand is, and the picture of the monarch of the glen in a yellow shining frame, with brown spots on the monarch from the damp in the house before last, and there was cook, very red and damp in the face, and with a clean apron tied on all crooked over the dirty one that she had dished up those dear delightful chickens in. She stood there, and she seemed to get redder and damper, and she twisted the corner of her apron round her fingers, and she said very shortly and fiercely, "If you please, ma'am, I should wish to leave at my day month." Mother leaned against the hat stand. The children could see her looking pale through the crack of the door, because she had been very kind to the cook, and had given her a holiday only the day before, and it seemed so very unkind of the cook to want to go like this, and on a Sunday too. "Why, what's the matter?" Mother said. "It's them children," the cook replied, and somehow the children all felt that they had known it from the first. They did not remember having done anything extra wrong, but it is so frightfully easy to displease a cook. It's them children. There's their new carpet in their room, covered thick with mud, both sides beastly yellow mud, and sakes alive knows where they got it. And all that muck to clean up on a Sunday. It's not my place, and it's not my intentions, so I don't deceive you, ma'am, and but for them limbs, which they is if ever there was, it's not a bad place, though I says it, and I wouldn't wish to leave, but—" "I'm very sorry," said Mother gently. "I will speak to the children, and you had better think it over, and if you really wish to go, tell me tomorrow." Next day, Mother had a quiet talk with Cook, and Cook said she didn't mind if she stayed on a bit, just to see. But meantime, the question of the muddy carpet had been gone into thoroughly by Father and Mother. Jane's candid explanation that the mud had come from the bottom of a foreign tower where there was buried treasure was received with such chilling disbelief that the others limited their defense to an expression of sorrow and of a determination not to do it again. But Father said, and Mother agreed with him, because mothers have to agree with fathers, and not because it was her own idea, that children who coated a carpet on both sides with thick mud, and when they were asked for an explanation could only talk silly nonsense. That meant Jane's truthful statement, were not fit to have a carpet at all, and indeed, have one for a week. So the carpet was brushed with tie leaves, too, which was the only comfort Anthea could think of, and folded up and put away in the cupboard at the top of the stairs, and Daddy put the key in his trousers pocket. "Till Saturday," said he. "Never mind," said Anthea, "we've got the Phoenix." But as it happened, they hadn't. The Phoenix was nowhere to be found, and everything had suddenly settled down from the rosy wild beauty of magic happenings to the common damp brownness of ordinary November life in Camden Town. And there was the nursery floor all bare boards in the middle and brown oilcloth round the outside. And the bareness and yellowness of the middle floor showed up the black beetles with terrible distinctness, when the poor things came out in the evening, as usual, to try to make friends with the children. But the children never would. The Sunday ended in gloom, which even junket for supper in the blue Dresden bowl could hardly lighten at all. Next day the lamb's cough was worse. It certainly seemed very whoopy, and the doctor came in his brougham carriage. Everyone tried to bear up under the weight of the sorrow which it was to know that the wishing carpet was locked up and the Phoenix mislaid. A good deal of time was spent in looking for the Phoenix. "It's a bird of its word," said Anthea. "I'm sure it's not deserted us, but you know it had a most awfully long fly from wherever it was to near Rochester and back, and I expect the poor thing's feeling tired out and wants rest. I am sure we may trust it." The others tried to feel sure of this too, but it was hard. No one could be expected to feel very kindly towards the cook, since it was entirely through her making such a fuss about a little foreign mud that the carpet had been taken away. "She might have told us," said Jane, "and Panther and I would have cleaned it with tea leaves." "She's a cantankerous cat," said Robert. "I shan't say what I think about her," said Anthea primly, "because it would be evil speaking, lying, and slandering." "It's not lying to say she's a disagreeable pig, and a beastly blue-nosed boz-was," said Cyril, who had read the eyes of light, and intended to talk like Tony as soon as he could teach Robert to talk like Paul. And all the children, even Anthea, agreed that even if she wasn't a blue-nosed boz-was, they wished Cook had never been born. But I ask you to believe that they didn't do all the things on purpose which so annoyed the cook during the following week, though I dare say the things would not have happened if the cook had been a favorite. This is a mystery. Explain it if you can. The things that had happened were as follows. Sunday, discovery of foreign mud on both sides of the carpet. Monday, licorice put on to boil with aniseed balls in a saucepan. Anthea did this because she thought it would be good for the lamb's cough. The whole thing forgotten, and bottom of saucepan burned out. It was the little saucepan lined with white that was kept for the baby's milk. Tuesday, a dead mouse found in pantry. Fish slice taken to dig grave with. By regrettable accident, fish slice broken. Defense: the cook oughtn't to keep dead mice in pantries. Wednesday, chopped suet left on kitchen table. Robert added chopped soap, but he says he thought the suet was soap too. Thursday, broke the kitchen window by falling against it during a perfectly fair game of bandits in the area. Friday, stopped up grating of kitchen sink with putty and filled sink with water to make a lake to sail paper boats in. Went away and left the tap running. Kitchen hearthrug and cook's shoes ruined. On Saturday, the carpet was restored. There had been plenty of time during the week to decide where it should be asked to go when they did get it back. Mother had gone over to Granny S. and had not taken the lamb because he had a bad cough, which, cook repeatedly said, was whooping cough as sure as eggs is eggs. "But we'll take him out, a ducky darling," said Anthea. "We'll take him somewhere where you can't have whooping cough. Don't be so silly, Robert. If he does talk about it, no one'll take any notice. He's always talking about things he's never seen." So they dressed the lamb and themselves in out-of-doors clothes, and the lamb chuckled and coughed, and laughed and coughed, Gain, poor dear, and all the chairs and tables were moved off the carpet by the boys, while Jane nursed the lamb, and Anthea rushed through the house in one last wild hunt for the missing phoenix. "It's no use waiting for it," she said, reappearing breathless in the breakfast room. "But I know it hasn't deserted us. It's a bird of its word." "Quite so," said the gentle voice of the phoenix from beneath the table. Everyone fell on its knees and looked up, and there was the phoenix perched on a crossbar of wood that ran across under the table, and had once supported a drawer, in the happy days before the drawer had been used as a boat, and its bottom unfortunately trodden out by Ragged's really reliable school boots on the feet of Robert. "I've been here all the time," said the phoenix, yawning politely behind its claw. "If you wanted me, you should have recited the Ode of Invocation. It's 7,000 lines long, and written in very pure and beautiful Greek." "Couldn't you tell it us in English?" asked Anthea. "It's rather long, isn't it?" said Jane, jumping the lamb on her knee. "Couldn't you make a short English version, like Tate and Brady?" "Oh, come along, do," said Robert, holding out his hand. "Come along, good old phoenix." "Good old beautiful phoenix," it corrected shyly. "Good old beautiful phoenix, then. Come along, said Robert impatiently, with his hand still held out. The phoenix fluttered at once onto his wrist. "This amiable youth," it said to the others, "has miraculously been able to put the whole meaning of the 7,000 lines of Greek invocation into one English hexameter. A little misplaced some of the words, but oh, come along, good old beautiful phoenix. Not perfect, I admit, but not bad for a boy of his age." "Well, now then," said Robert, stepping back onto the carpet with the golden phoenix on his wrist. "You look like the king's falconer," said Jane, sitting down on the carpet with the baby on her lap. Robert tried to go on looking like it. Cyril and Anthea stood on the carpet. "We shall have to get back before dinner," said Cyril, "or cook will blow the gaff." "She hasn't sneaked since Sunday," said Anthea. Robert was beginning, when the door burst open and the cook, fierce and furious, came in like a whirlwind and stood on the corner of the carpet, with a broken basin in one hand and a threat in the other, which was clenched. "Look 'ere," she cried, "my only basin," And what the powers am I to make the beefsteak and kidney pudding in that your ma ordered for your dinners? You don't deserve no dinners, so you don't." "I'm awfully sorry, cook," said Anthea gently. "It was my fault, and I forgot to tell you about it. It got broken when we were telling our fortunes with melted lead, you know, and I meant to tell you." "Meant to tell me," replied the cook. She was red with anger, and really I don't wonder, meant to tell. "Well, I mean to tell, too. I've held my tongue this week through because the missus she said to me quiet like, 'We mustn't expect old heads on young shoulders.' But now I shan't hold it no longer. There was the soap you put in our pudding, and me and Eliza never so much as breathed it to your ma, though well we might, and the saucepan and the fish slice, and my gracious cat's alive. What ave you got that blessed child dressed up in his outdoors for?" "We aren't going to take him out," said Anthea. "At least," she stopped short, for though they weren't going to take him out in the Kentish town road, they certainly intended to take him elsewhere, but not at all where cook meant when she said out. This confused the truthful Anthea. "Out," said the cook, "that I'll take care you don't," and she snatched the lamb from the lap of Jane, while Anthea and Robert caught her by the skirts and apron. "Look here," said Cyril in stern desperation. "Will you go away and make your pudding in a pie dish, or a flower pot, or a hot water can, or something?" "Not me," said the cook briefly, "and leave this precious poppet for you to give his deather cold too." "I warn you," said Cyril solemnly, "beware ere yet it be too late." "Late yourself the little popsy-wopsy," said the cook with angry tenderness. "They shan't take it out, no more they shan't. And where did you get that there yellow fowl?" She pointed to the phoenix. Even Anthea saw that unless the cook lost her situation, the loss would be theirs. "I wish," she said suddenly, "we were on a sunny southern shore where there can't be any whooping cough." She said it through the frightened howls of the lamb and the sturdy scoldings of the cook, and instantly the giddy go-round-end falling-lift feeling swept over the whole party, and the cook sat down flat on the carpet, holding the screaming lamb tight to her stout print-covered self, and calling on St. Bridget to help her. She was an Irish woman. The moment the tipsy-topsy-turvy feeling stopped, the cook opened her eyes, gave one soundy "ng" screech, and shut them again, and Anthea took the opportunity to get the desperately howling lamb into her own arms. "It's all right," she said. "Own panther's got you. Look at the trees and the sand and the shells and the great big tortoises. Oh dear, how hot it is." It certainly was, for the trusty carpet had laid itself out on a southern shore that was sunny and no mistake, as Robert remarked. The greenest of green slopes led up to glorious groves where palm trees and all the tropical flowers and fruits that you read of in Westward Ho, and fair play were growing in rich profusion. Between the green slope and the blue sea lay a stretch of sand that looked like a carpet of jeweled cloth of gold, for it was not grayish as our northern sand is, but yellow and changing, opal-colored like sunshine and rainbows. And at the very moment when the wild, whirling, blinding, deafening, tumbling upside-downness of the carpet moving stopped, the children had the happiness of seeing 3 large live turtles waddle down to the edge of the sea and disappear in the water. And it was hotter than you can possibly imagine, unless you think of ovens on a baking day. Everyone without an instant's hesitation tore off its London in November outdoor clothes, and Anthea took off the lamb's highwayman blue coat and his 3-cornered hat, and then his jersey, and then the lamb himself suddenly slipped out of his little blue tight breeches and stood up happy and hot in his little white shirt. "I'm sure it's much warmer than the seaside in the summer," said Anthea. "Mother always lets us go barefoot then." So the lamb's shoes and socks and gaiters came off, and he stood digging his happy naked pink toes into the golden smooth sand. "I'm a little white duck dicky," said he, "a little white duck dicky what swims," and splashed quacking into a sandy pool. "Let him," said Anthea. It can't hurt him. Oh, how hot it is." The cook suddenly opened her eyes and screamed, shut them, screamed again, opened her eyes once more and said, "Why, drat my cat's alive, what's all this? It's a dream, I expect." "Well, it's the best I ever dreamed. I'll look it up in the dream book tomorrow. Seaside and trees and a carpet to sit on. I never did." "Look here," said Cyril. "It isn't a dream, it's real." "Oh yes," said the cook. "They always says that in dreams." "It's real, I tell you," Robert said, stamping his foot. "I'm not going to tell you how it's done because that's our secret." He winked heavily at each of the others in turn. "But you wouldn't go away and make that pudding, so we had to bring you, and I hope you like it." "I do that and no mistake," said the cook unexpectedly. "And it being a dream, it don't matter what I say. And I will say, if it's my last word, that of all the aggravating little varmints—" "Calm yourself, my good woman," said the Phoenix. "Good woman indeed," said the cook. "Good woman yourself." Then she saw who it was that had spoken. "Well, if I ever," said she. "This is something like a dream. Yellow fowls a-talking and all. I've heard of such, but never did I think to see the day." "Well then," said Cyril impatiently, "sit here and see the day now. It's a jolly fine day. Here, you others, a council." They walked along the shore till they were out of earshot of the cook, who still sat gazing about her with a happy, dreamy, vacant smile. "Look here," said Cyril. "We must roll the carpet up and hide it so that we can get at it at any moment. The lamb can be getting rid of his whooping cough all the morning and we can look about. And if the savages on this island are cannibals, we'll hook it and take her back. And if not, we'll leave her here." "Is that being kind to servants and animals, like the clergyman said?" asked Jane. "Nor she isn't kind," retorted Cyril. "Well, anyway," said Anthea, "the safest thing is to leave the carpet there with her sitting on it. Perhaps it'll be a lesson to her, and anyway, if she thinks it's a dream, it won't matter what she says when she gets home." So the extra coats and hats and mufflers were piled on the carpet. Cyril shouldered the well and happy lamb, the Phoenix perched on Robert's wrist, and the party of explorers prepared to enter the interior. The grassy slope was smooth, but under the trees there were tangled creepers with bright, strange-shaped flowers, and it was not easy to walk. "We ought to have an explorer's axe," said Robert. "I shall ask Father to give me one for Christmas." There were curtains of creepers with scented blossoms hanging from the trees, and brilliant birds darted about quite close to their faces. "Now tell me honestly," said the Phoenix, "are there any birds here handsomer than I am? Don't be afraid of hurting my feelings. I'm a modest bird, I hope." "Not one of them," said Robert with conviction, "is a patch upon you." "I was never a vain bird," said the Phoenix, "but I own that you confirm my own impression. I will take a flight." It circled in the air for a moment, and returning to Robert's wrist, went on. "There is a path to the left." And there was. So now the children went on through the wood more quickly and comfortably, the girls picking flowers and the lamb inviting the pretty dickies to observe that he himself was a little white real water-wet duck. And all this time he had whooping coughed once. The path turned and twisted, and always threading their way amid a tangle of flowers, the children suddenly passed a corner and found themselves in a forest clearing where there were a lot of pointed huts. The huts, as they knew at once, of savages. The boldest heart beat more quickly. Suppose they were cannibals. It was a long way back to the carpet. "Hadn't we better go back?" said Jane. "Go now," she said, and her voice trembled a little. "Suppose they eat us." "Nonsense, pussy," said Cyril firmly. "Look, there's a goat tied up. That shows they don't eat people." "Let's go on and say we're missionaries," Robert suggested. "I shouldn't advise that," said the Phoenix very earnestly. Why not? Well, for one thing, it isn't true, replied the golden bird. It was while they stood hesitating on the edge of the clearing that a tall man suddenly came out of one of the huts. He had hardly any clothes, and his body all over was a dark and beautiful coppery color, just like the chrysanthemum's father had brought home on Saturday. In his hand he held a spear. The whites of his eyes and the white of his teeth were the only light things about him, except that where the sun shone on his shiny brown body it looked white, too. If you will look carefully at the next shiny savage you meet with next to nothing on, you will see at once, if the sun happens to be shining at the time, that I am right about this. The savage looked at the children. Concealment was impossible. He uttered a shout that was more like "ooh goggery bagwag" than anything else the children had ever heard, and at once brown coppery people leapt out of every hut and swarmed like ants about the clearing. There was no time for discussion, and no one wanted to discuss anything anyhow. Whether these coppery people were cannibals or not now seemed to matter very little. Without an instant's hesitation, the 4 children turned and ran back along the forest path. The only pause was Anthea's. She stood back to let Cyril pass, because he was carrying the lamb, who screamed with delight. He had not whooping coughed a single once since the carpet landed him on the island. "Gee up, squirrel, gee," he shouted, and Cyril did gee up. The path was a shorter cut to the beach than the creeper-covered way by which they had come, and almost directly they saw through the trees the shining blue and gold and opal of sand and sea. "Stick to it," cried Cyril breathlessly. They did stick to it. They tore down the sands. They could hear behind them as they ran the patter of feet which they knew too well were copper-colored. The sands were golden and opal-colored and bare. There were wreaths of tropic seaweed. There were rich tropic shells of the kind you would not buy in the Kentish town road under at least 15 pence a pair. There were turtles basking lumpily on the water's edge, but no cook, no clothes, and no carpet. On, into the sea," gasped Cyril. "They must hate water, I've heard. Savages always dirty." Their feet were splashing in the warm shallows before his breathless words were ended. The calm baby waves were easy to go through. It is warm work running for your life in the tropics, and the coolness of the water was delicious. They were up to their armpits now, and Jane was up to her chin. "Look," said the phoenix. "What are they pointing at?" The children turned, and there, a little to the west, was a head they knew, with a crooked cap upon it. It was the head of the cook. For some reason or other, the savages had stopped at the water's edge and were all talking at the top of their voices, and all were pointing copper-colored fingers, stiff with interest and excitement, at the head of the cook. The children hurried towards her as quickly as the water would let them. "What on earth did you come out here for?" Robert shouted. "And where on earth's the carpet?" "It's not on earth, bless you," replied the cook happily. "It's under me in the water. I got a bit warm setting there in the sun, and I just says, I wish I was in a cold bath. Just like that, and next minute here I was. It's all part of the dream." Everyone at once saw how extremely fortunate it was that the carpet had had the sense to take the cook to the nearest and largest bath, the sea, and how terrible it would have been if the carpet had taken itself, and her, to the stuffy little bathroom of the house in Camden Town. "Excuse me," said the phoenix's soft voice, breaking in on the general sigh of relief, "but I think these brown people want your cook." To eat," whispered Jane as well as she could through. The water which the plunging lamb was dashing in her face, with happy fat hands and feet. "Hardly," rejoined the bird. "Who wants cooks to eat? Cooks are engaged, not eaten. They wish to engage her." "How can you understand what they say?" asked Cyril doubtfully. "It's as easy as kissing your claw," replied the bird. I speak and understand all languages, even that of your cook, which is difficult and unpleasing. It's quite easy when you know how it's done. It just comes to you. I should advise you to beach the carpet and land the cargo, the cook, I mean. You can take my word for it, the copper-colored ones will not harm you now. It is impossible not to take the word of a phoenix when it tells you to. So the children at once got hold of the corners of the carpet, and pulling it from under the cook, towed it slowly in through the shallowing water, and at last spread it on the sand. The cook, who had followed, instantly sat down on it, and at once the copper-colored natives, now strangely humble, formed a ring round the carpet and fell on their faces on the rainbow and gold sand. The tallest savage spoke in this position, which must have been very awkward for him, and Jane noticed that it took him quite a long time to get the sand out of his mouth afterwards. He says, the phoenix remarked after some time, that they wish to engage your cook permanently. Without a character? Asked Anthea, who had heard her mother speak of such things. They do not wish to engage her as cook, but as queen, and queens need not have characters. There was a breathless pause. Well, said Cyril, of all the choices, but there's no accounting for tastes. Everyone laughed at the idea of the cook's being engaged as queen. They could not help it. I do not advise laughter, warned the phoenix, ruffling out his golden feathers, which were extremely wet. And it's not their own choice. It seems that there is an ancient prophecy of this copper-colored tribe that a great queen should someday arise out of the sea with a white crown on her head, and well, you see, there's the crown. It pointed its claw at Cook's cap, and a very dirty cap it was, because it was the end of the week. That's the white crown, it said. At least it's nearly white, very white indeed compared to the color they are, and anyway, it's quite white enough. Cyril addressed the cook. Look here, said he, these brown people want you to be their queen. They're only savages and they don't know any better. Now would you really like to stay? Or if you'll promise not to be so jolly aggravating at home and not to tell anyone a word about today, we'll take you back to Camden Town. No, you don't, said the cook in firm, undoubting tones. I've always wanted to be the queen, God bless her, and I always thought what a good one I should make, and now I'm going to. If it's only in a dream, it's well worthwhile, and I don't go back to that nasty underground kitchen and be blamed for everything, that I don't, not till the dream's finished and I wake up with that nasty bell orang-tanging in my ears, so I tell you. Are you sure, Anthea anxiously asked the phoenix, that she will be quite safe here? She will find the nest of a queen a very precious and soft thing, said the bird solemnly. There you hear, said Cyril. You're in for a precious soft thing, so mind you're a good queen, cook. It's more than you'd any right to expect, but long may you reign. Some of the cook's copper-colored subjects now advanced from the forest with long garlands of beautiful flowers, white and sweet-scented, and hung them respectfully round the neck of their new sovereign. What, all them lovely bouquets for me, exclaimed the enraptured cook. Well, this here is something like a dream, I must say. She sat up very straight on the carpet, and the copper-colored ones, themselves wreathed in garlands of the gayest flowers, madly stuck parrot feathers in their hair and began to dance. It was a dance such as you have never seen. It made the children feel almost sure that the cook was right, and that they were all in a dream. Small, strange-shaped drums were beaten, odd-sounding songs were sung, and the dance got faster and faster and odder, till at last all the dancers fell on the sand tired out. The new queen, with her white crown cap all on one side, clapped wildly. Bravo, she cried, bravo. It's better than the Albert Edward Music Hall in the Kentish Town Road. Go it again. But the phoenix would not translate this request into the copper-colored language, and when the savages had recovered their breath, they implored their queen to leave her white escort and come with them to their huts. "The finest shall be yours, O queen," said they. "Well, so long," said the cook, getting heavily onto her feet when the phoenix had translated this request. "No more kitchens and attics for me, thank you. I'm off to my royal palace, I am, and I only wish this here Drea would keep on forever and ever." She picked up the ends of the garlands that trailed round her feet, and the children had one last glimpse of her striped stockings and worn elastic-side boots before she disappeared into the shadow of the forest, surrounded by her dusky retainers, singing songs of rejoicing as they went. "Well," said Cyril, "I suppose she's all right, but they don't seem to count us for much, one way or the other." "Oh," said the phoenix, "they think you're merely dreams. The prophecy said that the queen would arise from the waves with a white crown and surrounded by white dream children. That's about what they think you are." "And what about dinner?" said Robert abruptly. "There won't be any dinner with no cook and no pudding basin," Anthea reminded him. "But there's always bread and butter." "Let's get home," said Cyril. The lamb was furiously unwishful to be dressed in his warm clothes again, but Anthea and Jane managed it, by force disguised as coaxing, and he never once whooping coughed. Then everyone put on its own warm things and took its place on the carpet. A sound of uncouth singing still came from beyond the trees, where the copper-colored natives were crooning songs of admiration and respect to their white-crowned queen. Then Anthea said, "Home," just as duchesses and other people do to their coachmen, and the intelligent carpet in one whirling moment laid itself down in its proper place on the nursery floor. And at that very moment, Eliza opened the door and said, "Cook's gone. I can't find her anywhere, and there's no dinner ready. She hasn't taken her box nor yet her outdoor things. She just ran out to see the time. I shouldn't wonder. The kitchen clock never did give her satisfaction, and she's got run over or fell down in a fit as likely as not. You'll have to put up with the cold bacon for your dinners, and what on earth you've got your outdoor things on for I don't know. And then I'll slip out and see if they know anything about her at the police station." But nobody ever knew anything about the cook anymore, except the children and, later, one other person. Mother was so upset at losing the cook and so anxious about her that Anthea felt most miserable, as though she had done something very wrong indeed. She woke several times in the night, and at last decided that she would ask the phoenix to let her tell her mother all about it. But there was no opportunity to do this next day, because the phoenix, as usual, had gone to sleep in some out-of-the-way spot, after asking, as a special favor, not to be disturbed for 24 hours. The lamb never whooping coughed once all that Sunday, and mother and father said what good medicine it was that the doctor had given him. But the children knew that it was the southern shore where you can't have whooping cough that had cured him. The lamb babbled of colored sand and water, but no one took any notice of that. He often talked of things that hadn't happened. It was on Monday morning, very early indeed, that Anthea woke and suddenly made up her mind. She crept downstairs in her nightgown. It was very chilly, sat down on the carpet, and with a beating heart wished herself on the sunny shore where you can't have whooping cough, and next moment there she was. The sand was splendidly warm. She could feel it at once, even through the carpet. She folded the carpet and put it over her shoulders like a shawl, for she was determined not to be parted from it for a single instant, no matter how hot it might be to wear. Then, trembling a little and trying to keep up her courage by saying over and over, "It is my duty, it is my duty," she went up the forest path. "Well, here you are again," said the cook, directly she saw Anthea. "This dream does keep on." The cook was dressed in a white robe. She had no shoes and stockings and no cap, and she was sitting under a screen of palm leaves, for it was afternoon in the island and blazing hot. She wore a flower wreath on her hair, and copper-colored boys were fanning her with peacock's feathers. "They've got the cap put away," she said. "They seem to think a lot of it. Never saw one before, I expect." "Are you happy?" asked Anthea, panting. The sight of the cook as queen quite took her breath away. "I believe you, my dear," said the cook heartily. "Nothing to do unless you want to, but I'm getting rested now. Tomorrow I'm going to start cleaning out my hut if the dream keeps on, and I shall teach them cooking. They burns everything to a cinder now unless they eats it raw." "But can you talk to them?" "Lor love a duck, yes," the happy cook queen replied. "It's quite easy to pick up. I always thought I should be quick at foreign languages. I've taught them to understand dinner, and I want a drink, and you leave me be already." "Then you don't want anything?" Anthea asked earnestly and anxiously. "Not me, miss, except if you'd only go away. I'm afraid of me waking up with that bell going if you keep on stopping here a-talking to me. Long as this here dream keeps up I'm as happy as a queen." "Goodbye then," said Anthea gaily, for her conscience was clear now. She hurried into the wood, threw herself on the ground and said home, and there she was, rolled in the carpet on the nursery floor. "Shes all right anyhow," said Anthea, and went back to bed. "I'm glad somebody's pleased, but Mother will never believe me when I tell her." The story is indeed a little difficult to believe. Still, you might try. Chapter 4, 2 Bazaars. Mother was really a great dear. She was pretty and she was loving and most frightfully good when you were ill, and always kind and almost always just. That is, she was just when she understood things. But of course she did not always understand things. No one understands everything, and mothers are not angels, though a good many of them come pretty near it. The children knew that Mother always wanted to do what was best for them, even if she was not clever enough to know exactly what was the best. That was why all of them, but much more particularly Anthea, felt rather uncomfortable at keeping the great secret from her of the wishing carpet and the phoenix. And Anthea, whose inside mind was made so that she was able to be much more uncomfortable than the others, had decided that she must tell her mother the truth, however little likely it was that her mother would believe it. "Then I shall have done what's right," said she to the phoenix, "and if she doesn't believe me it won't be my fault, will it?" "Not in the least," said the golden bird, "and she won't, so you're quite safe." Anthea chose a time when she was doing her home lessons. They were algebra and Latin, German, English, and Euclid, and she asked her mother whether she might come and do them in the drawing room, so as to be quiet, she said to her mother. And to herself she said, "And that's not the real reason. I hope I shan't grow up a liar." Mother said, "Of course, dearie," and Anthea started swimming through a sea of X's and Y's and Z's. Mother was sitting at the mahogany bureau writing letters. "Mother dear," said Anthea. "Yes, love a duck," said Mother. "About cook," said Anthea. "I know where she is." "Do you, dear?" said Mother. "Well, I wouldn't take her back after the way she has behaved." "It's not her fault," said Anthea. "May I tell you about it from the beginning?" Mother laid down her pen, and her nice face had a resigned expression. As you know, a resigned expression always makes you want not to tell anybody anything. "It's like this," said Anthea in a hurry. "That egg, you know, that came in the carpet, we put it in the fire and it hatched into the phoenix, and the carpet was a wishing carpet, and—" "A very nice game, darling," said Mother, taking up her pen. "Now do be quiet. I've got a lot of letters to write. I'm going to Bournemouth tomorrow with the lamb, and there's that bazaar." Anthea went back to XYZ, and Mother's pen scratched busily. "But Mother," said Anthea, when Mother put down the pen to lick an envelope, "the carpet takes us wherever we like, and I wish it would take you where you could get a few nice Eastern things for my bazaar. said Mother. "I promised them, and I've no time to go to Liberty S now." "It shall," said Anthea, "but Mother—" "Well, dear," said Mother, a little impatiently, for she had taken up her pen again. "The carpet took us to a place where you couldn't have whooping cough, and the lamb hasn't whooped since, and we took Cook because she was so tiresome, and then she would stay and be queen of the savages. They thought her cap was a crown, and—" "Darling one," said Mother, "you know I love to hear the things you make up, but I am most awfully busy." "But it's true," said Anthea desperately. "You shouldn't say that, my sweet," said Mother gently, and then Anthea knew it was hopeless. "Are you going away for long?" asked Anthea. "I've got a cold," said Mother, "and Daddy's anxious about it and the lamb's cough." "He hasn't coughed since Saturday," the lamb's eldest sister interrupted. "I wish I could think so," Mother replied. "And Daddy's got to go to Scotland. I do hope you'll be good children." We will," said Anthea fervently. "When's the bazaar?" "On Saturday," said Mother, "at the schools. Oh, don't talk any more, there's a treasure. My head's going round and I've forgotten how to spell whooping cough." Mother and the lamb went away, and Father went away, and there was a new cook who looked so like a frightened rabbit that no one had the heart to do anything to frighten her any more than seemed natural to her. The Phoenix begged to be excused. It said it wanted a week's rest and asked that it might not be disturbed, and it hid its golden gleaming self and nobody could find it. So that when Wednesday afternoon brought an unexpected holiday, and everyone decided to go somewhere on the carpet, the journey had to be undertaken. In without the Phoenix, they were debarred from any carpet excursions in the evening by a sudden promise to Mother, exacted in the agitation of parting, that they would not be out after 6 at night except on Saturday when they were to go to the bazaar, and were pledged to put on their best clothes, to wash themselves to the uttermost, and to clean their nails, not with scissors, which are scratchy and bad, but with flat sharpened ends of wooden matches, which do no harm to anyone's nails. "Let's go and see the lamb," said Jane. But everyone was agreed that if they appeared suddenly in Bournemouth it would frighten Mother out of her wits, if not into a fit. So they sat on the carpet, and thought and thought and thought till they almost began to squint. "Look here," said Cyril. "I know. Please, carpet, take us somewhere where we can see the lamb and Mother and no one can see us." "Except the lamb," said Jane quickly. And the next moment they found themselves recovering from the upside-down movement, and there they were sitting on the carpet, and the carpet was laid out over another thick soft carpet of brown pine needles. There were green pine trees overhead, and a swift clear little stream was running as fast as ever it could between steep banks, and there, sitting on the pine needle carpet, was Mother without her hat. And the sun was shining brightly, although it was November, and there was the lamb, as jolly and not whooping at all. "The carpet deceived us," said Robert gloomily. "Mother will see us directly she turns her head." But the faithful carpet had not deceived them. Mother turned her dear head and looked straight at them, and did not see them. "We're invisible," Cyril whispered. "What awful larks!" But to the girls it was not larks at all. It was horrible to have Mother looking straight at them, and her face keeping the same, just as though they weren't there. "I don't like it," said Jane. "Mother never looked at us like that before, just as if she didn't love us, as if we were somebody else's children, and not very nice ones either, as if she didn't care whether she saw us or not." "It is horrid," said Anthea almost in tears. But at this moment the lamb saw them and plunged towards the carpet, shrieking, "Panty, own panty, and Pussy and Squiggle, and Bob's oh." Anthea caught him and kissed him, so did Jane. They could not help it. He looked such a darling, with his blue three-cornered hat all on one side and his precious face all dirty, quite in the old familiar way. "I love you, Panty. I love you and you and you and you," cried the lamb. It was a delicious moment. Even the boys thumped their baby brother joyously on the back. Then Anthea glanced at Mother, and Mother's face was a pale sea-green color, and she was staring at the lamb as if she thought he had gone mad. And indeed, that was exactly what she did think. "My lamb, my precious, come to Mother," she cried, and jumped up and ran to the baby. She was so quick that the invisible children had to leap back, or she would have felt them, and to feel what you can't see is the worst sort of ghost feeling. Mother picked up the lamb and hurried away from the pine wood. "Let's go home," said Jane, after a miserable silence. "It feels just exactly as if Mother didn't love us." But they couldn't bear to go home till they had seen Mother meet another lady, and knew that she was safe. You cannot leave your mother to go green in the face in a distant pine wood, far from all human aid, and then go home on your wishing carpet as though nothing had happened. When Mother seemed safe, the children returned to the carpet and said, "Home," and home they went. "I don't care about being invisible myself," said Cyril, "at least, not with my own family. It would be different if you were a prince or a bandit or a burglar." And now the thoughts of all four dwelt fondly on the dear greenish face of Mother. "I wish she hadn't gone away," said Jane. "The house is simply beastly without her." "I think we ought to do what she said," Anthea put in. "I saw something in a book the other day about the wishes of the departed being sacred." "That means when they've departed farther off," said Cyril. "India's coral or Greenland's icy, don't you know, not Bournemouth. Besides, we don't know what her wishes are." She said, Anthea was very much inclined to cry. She said, "Get Indian things for my bazaar." But I know she thought we couldn't and it was only play. "Let's get them all the same," said Robert. "We'll go the first thing on Saturday morning." And on Saturday morning, the first thing they went. There was no finding the phoenix, so they sat on the beautiful wishing carpet and said, "We want Indian things for Mother's bazaar. Will you please take us where people will give us heaps of Indian things?" The docile carpet swirled their senses away and restored them on the outskirts of a gleaming white Indian town. They knew it was Indian at once by the shap of the domes and roofs, and besides, a man went by on an elephant, and 2 English soldiers went along the road, talking like in Mr. Kipling's books, so after that no one could have any doubt as to where they were. They rolled up the carpet and Robert carried it, and they walked bodily into the town. It was very warm, and once more they had to take off their London in November coats and carry them on their arms. The streets were narrow and strange, and the clothes of the people in the streets were stranger, and the talk of the people was strangest of all. "I can't understand a word," said Cyril. "How on earth are we to ask for things for our bazaar?" "And they're poor people too," said Jane. "I'm sure they are. What we want is a Raja or something." Robert was beginning to unroll the carpet, but the others stopped him, imploring him not to waste a wish. "We asked the carpet to take us where we could get Indian things for bazaars," said Anthea, "and it will." Her faith was justified. Just as she finished speaking, a very brown gentleman in a turban came up to them and bowed deeply. He spoke, and they thrilled to the sound of English words. "My Ronnie, she think you very nice child. She asks, do you lose yourselves and do you desire to sell carpet? She see you from her palki. You come see her, yes." They followed the stranger, who seemed to have a great many more teeth in his smile than are usual, and he led them through crooked streets to the Rani's palace. I am not going to describe the Rani's palace, because I really have never seen the palace of a Rani, and Mr. Kipling has. So you can read about it in his books, but I know exactly what happened there. The old Ronnie sat on a low-cushioned seat, and there were a lot of other ladies with her, all in trousers and veils, and sparkling with tinsel and gold and jewels. And the brown, turbaned gentleman stood behind a sort of carved screen and interpreted what the children said and what the Queen said. And when the Queen asked to buy the carpet, the children said no. "Why?" asked the Ronnie. And Jane briefly said why, and the interpreter interpreted. The Queen spoke, and then the interpreter said, "My mistress says it is a good story, and you tell it all through without thought of time." And they had to. It made a long story, especially as it had all to be told twice, once by Cyril and once by the interpreter. Cyril rather enjoyed himself. He warmed to his work and told the tale of the phoenix and the carpet and the lone tower and the queen cook in language that grew insensibly more and more Arabian Nightsy, and the Rani and her ladies listened to the interpreter and rolled about on their fat cushions with laughter. When the story was ended, she spoke, and the interpreter explained that she had said, "Little one, thou art a heaven-born teller of tales," and she threw him a string of turquoises from round her neck. "Oh, how lovely!" cried Jane and Anthea. Cyril bowed several times, and then cleared his throat and said, "Thank her very, very much, but I would much rather she gave me some of the cheap things in the bazaar. Tell her I want them to sell again, and give the money to buy clothes for poor people who haven't any. Tell him he has my leave to sell my gift and clothe the naked with its price," said the Queen, when this was translated. But Cyril said very firmly, "No, thank you. The things have got to be sold today at our bazaar, and no one would buy a turquoise necklace at an English bazaar. They'd think it was sham, or else they'd want to know where we got it." So then the Queen sent out for little pretty things, and her servants piled the carpet with them. "I must needs lend you an elephant to carry them away," she said, laughing. But Anthea said, "If the Queen will lend us a comb and let us wash our hands and faces, she shall see a magic thing. We and the carpet and all these brass trays and pots and carved things and stuffs and things will just vanish away like smoke." The Queen clapped her hands at this idea and lent the children a sandalwood comb inlaid with ivory lotus flowers, and they washed their faces and hands in silver basins. Then Cyril made a very polite farewell speech, and quite suddenly he ended with the words, "And I wish we were at the bazaar at our schools." And of course they were, and the Queen and her ladies were left with their mouths open, gazing at the bare space on the inlaid marble floor where the carpet and the children had been. "That is magic, if ever magic was," said the Queen, delighted with the incident, which indeed has given the ladies of that court something to talk about on wet days ever since. Cyril's stories had taken some time, so had the meal of strange sweet foods that they had had while the little pretty things were being bought, and the gas in the schoolroom was already lighted. Outside, the winter dusk was stealing down among the Camden town houses. "I'm glad we got washed in India," said Cyril. "E should have been awfully late if we'd had to go home and scrub." "Besides," Robert said, "it's much warmer washing in India. I shouldn't mind it so much if we lived there." The thoughtful carpet had dumped the children down in a dusky space behind the point where the corners of two stalls met. The floor was littered with string and brown paper, and baskets and boxes were heaped along the wall. The children crept out under a stall covered with all sorts of table covers and mats and things, embroidered beautifully by idle ladies with no real work to do. They got out at the end, displacing a sideboard cloth adorned with a tasteful pattern of blue geraniums. The girls got out unobserved, so did Cyril, but Robert, as he cautiously emerged, was actually walked on by Mrs. Biddle, who kept the stall. Her large, solid foot stood firmly on the small, solid hand of Robert, and who can blame Robert if he did yell a little? A crowd instantly collected. Yells are very unusual at bazaars, and everyone was intensely interested. It was several seconds before the three free children could make Mrs. Biddle understand that what she was walking on was not a schoolroom floor, or even, as she presently supposed, a dropped pin cushion, but the living hand of a suffering child. When she became aware that she really had hurt him, she grew very angry indeed. When people have hurt other people by accident, the one who does the hurting is always much the angriest. I wonder why. "I'm very sorry, I'm sure," said Mrs. Biddle, but she spoke more in anger than in sorrow. "Come out. Whatever do you mean by creeping about under the stalls like earwigs?" "We were looking at the things in the corner." "Such nasty, prying ways," said Mrs. Biddle, "will never make you successful in life. There's nothing there but packing and dust." "Oh, isn't there?" said Jane. "That's all you know." "Little girl, don't be rude," said Mrs. Biddle, flushing violet. "She doesn't mean to be, but there are some nice things there all the same," said Cyril, who suddenly felt how impossible it was to inform the listening crowd that all the treasures piled on the carpet were Mother's contributions to the bazaar. No one would believe it, and if they did and wrote to thank Mother, she would think, well, goodness only knew what she would think. The other three children felt the same. "I should like to see them," said a very nice lady, whose friends had disappointed her, and who hoped that these might be belated contributions to her poorly furnished stall. She looked inquiringly at Robert, who said, "With pleasure, don't mention it," and dived back under Mrs. Biddle's stall. "I wonder you encourage such behavior," said Mrs. Biddle. "I always speak my mind, as you know, Miss Peasmarsh, and I must say I am surprised." She turned to the crowd. "There is no entertainment here," she said sternly. "A very naughty little boy has accidentally hurt himself, but only slightly. Will you please disperse? It will only encourage him in naughtiness if he finds himself the center of attraction." The crowd slowly dispersed. Anthea, speechless with fury, heard a nice curate say, "Poor little beggar," and loved the curate at once and forever. Then Robert wriggled out from under the stall with some Benares brass and some inlaid sandalwood boxes. "Liberty," cried Miss Peasmarsh. "Then Charles has not forgotten after all." "Excuse me," said Mrs. Biddle with fierce politeness. "These objects are deposited behind M.Y.'s stall. Some unknown donor who does good by stealth and would blush if he could hear you claim the things. Of course they are for me." "My stall touches yours at the corner," said poor Miss Peasmarsh timidly, "and my cousin did promise." The children sidled away from the unequal contest and mingled with the crowd. Their feelings were too deep for words, till at last Robert said, "That stiff-starched pig. And after all our trouble, I'm hoarse with gassing to that trousered lady in India." "The pig lady's very, very nasty," said Jane. It was Anthea who said in a hurried undertone, "She isn't very nice, and Miss Peasmarsh is pretty and nice too. Who's got a pencil?" It was a long crawl under 3 stalls, but Anthea did it. A large piece of pale blue paper lay among the rubbish in the corner. She folded it to a square and wrote upon it, licking the pencil at every word to make it mark quite blackly, "All these Indian things are for pretty nice Miss Peasmarsh's stall." She thought of adding, "There is nothing for Mrs. Biddle," but she saw that this might lead to suspicion, so she wrote hastily, "From an unknown Donna," and crept back among the boards and trestles to join the others. So that when Mrs. Biddle appealed to the bazaar committee, and the corner of the stall was lifted and shifted, so that stout clergymen and heavy ladies could get to the corner without creeping under stalls, the blue paper was discovered, and all the splendid, shining Indian things were given over to Miss P. Ismarsh, and she sold them all, and got £35 for them. I don't understand about that blue paper, said Mrs. Biddle. It looks to me like the work of a lunatic, and saying you were nice and pretty, it's not the work of a sane person. Anthea and Jane begged Miss Peasmarsh to let them help her to sell the things, because it was their brother who had announced the good news that the things had come. Miss Peasmarsh was very willing, for now her stall, that had been so neglected, was surrounded by people who wanted to buy, and she was glad to be helped. The children noted that Mrs. Biddle had not more to do in the way of selling than she could manage quite well. I hope they were not glad, for you should forgive your enemies, even if they walk on your hands and then say it is all your naughty fault. But I am afraid they were not so sorry as they ought to have been. It took some time to arrange the things on the stall. The carpet was spread over it, and the dark colors showed up the brass and silver and ivory things. It was a happy and busy afternoon, and when Miss Peasmarsh and the girls had sold every single one of the little pretty things from the Indian bazaar, far, far away, Anthea and Jane went off with the boys to fish in the fish pond, and dive into the bran pie, and hear the cardboard band, and the phonograph, and the chorus of singing birds that was done behind a screen with glass tubes and glasses of water. They had a beautiful tea, suddenly presented to them by the nice curate, and Miss Peasmarsh joined them before they had had more than 3 cakes each. It was a merry party, and the curate was extremely pleasant to everyone, even to Miss Peasmarsh, as Jane said afterwards. "We ought to get back to the stall," said Anthea, when no one could possibly eat any more, and the curate was talking in a low voice to Miss Peasmarsh about after Easter. "There's nothing to go back for," said Miss Peasmarsh gaily. "Thanks to you dear children, we've sold everything." There's the carpet," said Cyril. "Oh," said Miss Peasmarsh radiantly, "don't bother about the carpet. I've sold even that. Mrs. Biddle gave me 10 shillings for it. She said it would do for her servant's bedroom." "Why," said Jane, "her servants don't have carpets. We had cook from her and she told us so." "No scandal about Queen Elizabeth, if you please," said the curate cheerfully, and Miss Peasmarsh laughed and looked at him as though she had never dreamed that anyone could be so amusing. But the others were struck dumb. How could they say, "The carpet is ours," for who brings carpets to bazaars? The children were now thoroughly wretched, but I am glad to say that their wretchedness did not make them forget their manners, as it does sometimes, even with grown-up people, who ought to know ever so much better. They said, "Thank you very much for the jolly tea, and thanks for being so jolly, and thanks awfully for giving us such a jolly time." For the curate had stood fish ponds and bran pies and phonographs and the chorus of singing birds and had stood them like a man. The girls hugged Miss Peasmarsh, and as they went away they heard the curate say, "Jolly little kids, yes, but what about, you will let it be directly after Easter. Ah, do say you will." And Jane ran back and said, before Anthea could drag her away, "What are you going to do after Easter?" Miss Peasmarsh smiled and looked very pretty indeed, and the curate said, "I hope I am going to take a trip to the Fortunate Islands." "I wish we could take you on the wishing carpet," said Jane. "Thank you," said the curate, "but I'm afraid I can't wait for that. I must go to the Fortunate Islands before they make me a bishop. I should have no time afterwards." "I've always thought I should marry a bishop," said Jane. "His aprons would come in so useful. Wouldn't you like to marry a bishop, Miss Peasmarsh?" It was then that they dragged her away. As it was Robert's hand that Mrs. Biddle had walked on, it was decided that he had better not recall the incident to her mind, and so make her angry again. Anthea and Jane had helped to sell things at the rival stall, so they were not likely to be popular. A hasty council of 4 decided that Mrs. Biddle would hate Cyril less than she would hate the others. So the others mingled with the crowd, and it was he who said to her, "Mrs. Biddle, we meant to have that carpet. Would you sell it to us? We would give you." "Certainly not," said Mrs. Biddle. "Go away, little boy." There was that in her tone which showed Cyril, all too plainly, the hopelessness of persuasion. He found the others and said, "It's no use, she's like a lioness robbed of its puppies. We must watch where it goes, and Anthea, I don't care what you say. It's our own carpet. It wouldn't be burglary. It would be a sort of forlorn hope rescue party, heroic and daring and dashing and not wrong at all." The children still wandered among the gay crowd, but there was no there for them anymore. The chorus of singing birds sounded just like glass tubes being blown through water, and the phonograph simply made a horrid noise, so that you could hardly hear yourself speak. And the people were buying things they couldn't possibly want, and it all seemed very stupid. And Mrs. Biddle had bought the wishing carpet for 10 shillings. And the whole of life was sad and gray and dusty, and smelt of slight gas escapes, and hot people, and cake and crumbs, and all the children were very tired indeed. They found a corner within sight of the carpet, and there they waited miserably, till it was far beyond their proper bedtime. And when it was 10, the people who had bought things went away, but the people who had been selling stayed to count up their money. "And to jaw about it," said Robert. "I'll never go to another bazaar as long as ever I live. My hand is swollen as big as a pudding. I expect the nails in her horrible boots were poisoned." Just then someone, who seemed to have a right to interfere, said, "Everything is over now. You had better go home." So they went, and then they waited on the pavement under the gas lamp, where ragged children had been standing all the evening to listen to the band, and their feet slipped about in the greasy mud till Mrs. Biddle came out and was driven away in a cab with the many things she hadn't sold, and the few things she had bought, among others the carpet. The other stall holders left their things at the school till Monday morning, but Mrs. Biddle was afraid someone would steal some of them, so she took them in a cab. The children, now too desperate to care for mud or appearances, hung on behind the cab till it reached Mrs. Biddle's house. When she and the carpet had gone in and the door was shut, Anthea said, "Don't let's burgle, I mean do daring and dashing rescue acts, till we've given her a chance. Let's ring and ask to see her." The others hated to do this, but at last they agreed, on condition that Anthea would not make any silly fuss about the burglary afterwards, if it really had to come to that. So they knocked and rang, and a scared-looking parlor-maid opened the front door. While they were asking for Mrs. Biddle, they saw her. She was in the dining room, and she had already pushed back the table and spread out the carpet to see how it looked on the floor. "I knew she didn't want it for her servant's bedroom," Jane muttered. Anthea walked straight past the uncomfortable parlor-maid, and the others followed her. Mrs. Biddle had her back to them, and was smoothing down the carpet with the same boot that had trampled on the hand of Robert, so that they were all in the room, and Cyril, with great presence of mind, had shut the room door before she saw them. "Who is it, Jane?" she asked in a sour voice, and then turning suddenly she saw who it was. Once more her face grew violet, a deep dark violet. "You wicked daring little things," she cried. "How dare you come here? At this time of night, too. Be off, or I'll send for the police." "Don't be angry," said Anthea soothingly. "We only wanted to ask you to let us have the carpet. We have quite 12 shillings between us and—" "How dare you?" cried Mrs. Biddle, and her voice shook with angriness. "You do look horrid," said Jane suddenly. Mrs. Biddle actually stamped that booted foot of hers. "You rude, bare-faced child," she said. Anthea almost shook Jane, but Jane pushed forward in spite of her. It really is our nursery carpet, she said. You ask anyone if it is. Let's wish ourselves home, said Cyril in a whisper. No go, Robert whispered back. She'd be there too and raving mad as likely as not. Horrid thing, I hate her. I wish Mrs. Biddle was in an angelic good temper, cried Anthea suddenly. It's worth trying, she said to herself. Mrs. Biddle's face grew from purple to violet, and from violet to mauve, and from mauve to pink. Then she smiled quite a jolly smile. Why, so I am, she said. What a funny idea. Why shouldn't I be in a good temper, my dears? Once more the carpet had done its work, and not on Mrs. Biddle alone. The children felt suddenly good and happy. You're a jolly good sort, said Cyril. I see that now. I'm sorry we vexed you at the bazaar today. Not another word, said the changed Mrs. Biddle. Of course you shall have the carpet, my dears, if you've taken such a fancy to it. No, no, I won't have more than the 10 shillings I paid. It does seem hard to ask you for it after you bought it at the bazaar, said Anthea, but it really is our nursery carpet. It got to the bazaar by mistake with some other things. Did it really now? How vexing, said Mrs. Biddle kindly. Well, my dears, I can very well give the extra 10 shillings, so you take your carpet and we'll say no more about it. Have a piece of cake before you go. I'm so sorry I stepped on your hand, my boy. Is it all right now? Yes, thank you, said Robert. I say you are good. Not at all, said R.S. Biddle heartily. I'm delighted to be able to give any little pleasure to you dear children. And she helped them to roll up the carpet, and the boys carried it away between them. You are a dear, said Anthea, and she and Mrs. Biddle kissed each other heartily. Well, said Cyril as they went along the street. Yes, said Robert, and the odd part is that you feel just as if it was real, her being so jolly, I mean, and not only the carpet making her nice. Perhaps it is real, said Anthea, only it was covered up with crossness and tiredness and things, and the carpet took them away. I hope it'll keep them away, said Jane. She isn't ugly at all when she laughs. The carpet has done many wonders in its day, but the case of Mrs. Biddle is, I think, the most wonderful. For from that day she was never anything like so disagreeable as she was before, and she sent a lovely silver teapot and a kind letter to Miss Peasmarsh when the pretty lady married the nice curate. Just after Easter it was, and they went to Italy for their honeymoon. Chapter 5, The Temple. I wish we could find the phoenix, said Jane. It's much better company than the carpet. Beastly ungrateful little kids are, said Cyril. No, I'm not. Only the carpet never says anything and it's so helpless. It doesn't seem able to take care of itself. It gets sold and taken into the sea and things like that. You wouldn't catch the phoenix getting sold. It was 2 days after the bazaar. Everyone was a little cross. Some days are like that, usually Mondays, by the way. And this was a Monday. I shouldn't wonder if your precious phoenix had gone off for good, said Cyril. And I don't know that I blame it. Look at the weather. It's not worth looking at, said Robert, and indeed it was. The phoenix hasn't gone. I'm sure it hasn't, said Anthea. I'll have another look for it. Anthea looked under tables and chairs, and in boxes and baskets, in Mother's work-bag and Father's portmanteau. But still, the phoenix showed not so much as the tip of one shining feather. Then suddenly Robert remembered how the whole of the Greek invocation song of 7,000 lines had been condensed by him into one English hexameter. So he stood on the carpet and chanted, "Oh, come along, you good old beautiful phoenix." And almost at once there was a rustle of wings down the kitchen stairs, and the phoenix sailed in on wide gold wings. "Where on earth have you been?" asked Anthea. "I've looked everywhere for you." "Not everywhere," replied the bird, because you did not look in the place where I was. Confess that that hallowed spot was overlooked by you." "What hallowed spot?" asked Cyril, a little impatiently, for time was hastening on and the wishing carpet still idle. "The spot," said the phoenix, "which I hallowed by my golden presence was the lutron." "The what?" "The bath, the place of washing." "I'm sure you weren't," said Jane. "I looked there 3 times and moved all the towels." "I was concealed," said the phoenix, "on the summit of a metal column, enchanted, I should judge, for it felt warm to my golden toes, as though the glorious sun of the desert shone ever upon it." "Oh, you mean the cylinder," said Cyril. "It has rather a comforting feel this weather. And now where shall we go?" And then, of course, the usual discussion broke out as to where they should go and what they should do. And naturally, everyone wanted to do something that the others did not care about. "I am the eldest," Cyril remarked. "Let's go to the North Pole." "This weather, likely," Robert rejoined. "Let's go to the equator." "I think the diamond mines of Golconda would be nice," said Anthea. "Don't you agree, Jane?" "No, I don't," retorted Jane. "I don't agree with you. I don't agree with anybody." The phoenix raised a warning claw. "If you cannot agree among yourselves, I fear I shall have to leave you," it said. "Well, where shall we go? You decide," said all. "If I were you," said the bird thoughtfully, "I should give the carpet a rest. Besides, you'll lose the use of your legs if you go everywhere by carpet. Can't you take me out and explain your ugly city to me?" "We will if it clears up," said Robert without enthusiasm. "Just look at the rain. And why should we give the carpet a rest?" "Are you greedy and grasping and heartless and selfish?" asked the bird sharply. "No," said Robert with indignation. "Well then," said the phoenix. "And as to the rain, well, I am not fond of rain myself. If the sun knew I was here, he's very fond of shining on me because I look so bright and golden. He always says I repay a little attention. Haven't you some form of word suitable for use in wet weather?" "There's rain, rain, go away," said Anthea, "but it never does go." "Perhaps you don't say the invocation properly," said the bird. "Rain, rain, go away. Come again another day. Little baby wants to play," said Anthea. "That's quite wrong, and if you say it in that sort of dull way, I can quite understand the rain not taking any notice. You should open the window and shout as loud as you can. Rain, rain, go away. Come again another day. Now we want the sun, and so, pretty rain, be kind and go. You should always speak politely to people when you want them to do things, and especially when it's going away that you want them to do. And today, you might add, shine great sun, the lovely foe. Nix is here and wants to be shone on, splendid sun, by thee." "That's poetry," said Cyril decidedly. "It's like it," said the more cautious Robert. "I was obliged to put in lovely," said the phoenix modestly, "to make the line long enough." "There are plenty of nasty words just that length," said Jane, but everyone else said hush. And then they opened the window and shouted the 7 lines as loud as they could, and the phoenix said all the words with them, except lovely, and when they came to that it looked down and coughed bashfully. The rain hesitated a moment, and then went away. "There's true politeness," said the phoenix, and the next moment it was perched on the window ledge, opening and shutting its radiant wings and flapping out its golden feathers in such a flood of glorious sunshine as you sometimes have at sunset in autumn time. People said afterwards that there had not been such sunshine in December for years and years and years. "And now," said the bird, "we will go out into the city, and you shall take me to see one of my temples." "Your temples?" I gather from the carpet that I have many temples in this land. I don't see how you can find anything out from it, said Jane. It never speaks. All the same, you can pick up things from a carpet, said the bird. I've seen you do it, and I have picked up several pieces of information in this way. That papyrus on which you showed me my picture, I understand that it bears on it the name of the street of your city in which my finest temple stands, with my image graved in stone and in metal over against its portal. You mean the fire insurance office, said Robert. It's not really a temple and they don't. Excuse me, said the Phoenix coldly. You are wholly misinformed. It is a temple and they do. Don't let's waste the sunshine, said Anthea. We might argue as we go along to save time. So the Phoenix consented to make itself a nest in the breast of Robert's Norfolk jacket, and they all went out into the splendid sunshine. The best way to the Temple of the Phoenix seemed to be to take the tram, and on the top of it the children talked, while the Phoenix now and then put out a wary beak, cocked a cautious eye, and contradicted what the children were saying. It was a delicious ride, and the children felt how lucky they were to have had the money to pay for it. They went with the tram as far as it went, and when it did not go any farther they stopped too and got off. The tram stops at the end of the Gray's Inn Road, and it was Cyril who thought that one might well find a short cut to the Phoenix office through the little streets and courts that lie tightly packed between Fetter Lane and Ludgate Circus. Of course, he was quite mistaken, as Robert told him at the time, and afterwards Robert did not forbear to remind his brother how he had said so. The streets there were small and stuffy and ugly, and crowded with printers' boys and binders, girls coming out from work, and these stared so hard at the pretty red coats and caps of the sisters that they wished they had gone some other way. And the printers and binders made very personal remarks, advising Jane to get her hair cut, and inquiring where Anthea had bought that hat. Jane and Anthea scorned to reply, and Cyril and Robert found that they were hardly a match for the rough crowd. They could think of nothing nasty enough to say. They turned a corner sharply, and then Anthea pulled Jane into an archway, and then inside a door. Cyril and Robert quickly followed, and the jeering crowd passed by without seeing them. Anthea drew a long breath. "How awful," she said. "I didn't know there were such people except in books. It was a bit thick, but it's partly you girls' fault coming out in those flashy coats." "We thought we ought to when we were going out with the Phoenix," said Jane. And the bird said, "Quite right, too," and incautiously put out his head to give her a wink of encouragement. And at the same instant, a dirty hand reached through the grim balustrade of the staircase beside them and clutched the Phoenix, and a hoarse voice said, "I say, Herb, blowed if this ain't our poll parrot what we lost. Thank you very much, Liddy, for bringin' I am home to roost." The four turned swiftly. Two large and ragged boys were crouched amid the dark shadows of the stairs. They were much larger than Robert and Cyril, and one of them had snatched the Phoenix away and was holding it high above their heads. "Give me thaw." "T-Bird," said Cyril sternly, "it's ours." "Good arternoon, and thankin' you," the boy went on, with maddening mockery. "Sorry I can't give your tuppence for your trouble, but I've 'ad to spend my fortune advertising for my valuable bird in all the newspapers. You can call for the reward next year." "Look out, Ike," said his friend a little anxiously. "It ave a beak on it." "It's other parties as'll have the beak on to 'im presently," said Ike darkly, "if they come a-trying to lay claims on my poll parrot. You just shut up, Herb. Now then, you four little gels, get out this." "Little girls," cried Robert. "I little girl you." He sprang up 3 stairs and hid out. There was a squawk, the most bird-like noise anyone had ever heard from the Phoenix, and a fluttering and a laugh in the darkness, and Ike said, "There now you've been and gone and strook my poll parrot right in the fevers. Strook, I am something cruel, you Ave. Robert stamped with fury. Cyril felt himself growing pale with rage, and with the effort of screwing up his brain to make it clever enough to think of some way of being even with those boys. Anthea and Jane were as angry as the boys, but it made them want to cry. Yet it was Anthea who said, "Do please let us have the bird. Do please get along and leave us and our bird alone." "If you don't," said Anthea, "I shall fetch the police." "You better," said he who was named Herb. "Say, Ike, you twist the bloomin' pigeon's neck. He ain't worth tuppence." "Oh no," cried Jane, "don't hurt it. Oh, don't. It is such a pet." "I won't hurt it," said Ike. "I'm shamed of you, Herb, for to think of such a thing. Arf a shiner, miss, and the bird is yours for life." "Half a what?" asked Anthea. "Arf a shiner quid thick half a sov then." "I haven't got it, and besides it's our bird," said Anthea. "Oh, don't talk to him," said Cyril, and then Jane said suddenly, "Phoenix, dear Phoenix, we can't do anything. You must manage it." "With pleasure," said the Phoenix, and Ike nearly dropped it in his amazement. "I say it do talk suthin like," said he. "Youth," said the Phoenix, "sons of misfortune, hear my words." "My eyes," said Ike. "Look out, Ike," said Herb. "You'll throttle the joker, and I see at once was wuth his weight in flimsies. Hearken, O iconoclasts, despiser of sacred images, and thou, Urbanus, dweller in the sordid city, forbear this adventure lest a worse thing befall." "Love us," said Ike, "ain't it been taught at schoolin' just? Restore me to my young acolytes and escape unscathed. Retain me, and—" "They must ha got all this up, case the Polly got pinched," said Ike. "Lor lum, the artfulness of them young uns. I say, slosh in the Jessich and get clear off with the swags what I say," urged Herbert. "Right-o," said Isaac. "Forbear," repeated the Phoenix sternly. "Who pinched the click off of the old bloke in Aldermanbury?" it added in a changed tone. "Who sneaked the nose rag out of the young Gel S. and in Bell Court? Who—" "Stow it," said Ike. "You, ya, leave go of me. Bash him off, Herb. E'll have my bloomin' eyes outer my ed." There were howls, a scuffle, a flutter. Ike and Herb fled up the stairs, and the Phoenix swept out through the doorway. The children followed, and the Phoenix settled on Robert, like a butterfly on a rose, as Anthea said afterwards, and wriggled into the breast of his Norfolk jacket, like an eel into mud, as Cyril later said. "Why ever didn't you burn him? You could have, couldn't you?" asked Robert, when the hurried flight through the narrow courts had ended in the safe wideness of Farringdon Street. "I could have, of course," said the bird, "but I didn't think it would be dignified to allow myself to get warm about a little thing like that. The fates, after all, have not been illiberal to me. I have a good many friends among the London sparrows, and I have a beak and claws." These happenings had somewhat shaken the adventurous temper of the children, and the Phoenix had to exert its golden self to hearten them up. Presently the children came to a great house in Lombard Street, and there, on each side of the door, was the image of the Phoenix carved in stone, and set forth on shining brass were the words, "Phoenix Fire Office." "One moment," said the bird. "Fire, for altars, I suppose." "I don't know," said Robert. He was beginning to feel shy, and that always made him rather cross. "Oh, yes, you do," Cyril contradicted. "When people's houses are burnt down, the Phoenix gives them new houses. Father told me, I asked him. The house, then, like the Phoenix, rises from its ashes. Well have my priests dealt with the sons of men." "The sons of men pay, you know," said Anthea, "but it's only a little every year." "That is to maintain my priests," said the bird, "who in the hour of affliction heal sorrows and rebuild houses. Lead on, inquire for the high priest. I will not break upon them too suddenly in all my glory. Noble, and honor-deserving are they who make as naught the evil deeds of the lame-footed and unpleasing Hephaestus. I don't know what you're talking about, and I wish you wouldn't muddle us with new names. Fire just happens. Nobody does it, not as a deed, you know, Cyril explained. If they did, the phoenix wouldn't help them because it's a crime to set fire to things. Arsenic or something they call it, because it's as bad as poisoning people. The phoenix wouldn't help them. Father told me it wouldn't. My priests do well, said the phoenix. Lead on. I don't know what to say, said Cyril, and the others said the same. Ask for the high priest, said the phoenix. Say that you have a secret to unfold that concerns my worship, and he will lead you to the innermost sanctuary. So the children went in, all 4 of them, though they didn't like it, and stood in a large and beautiful hall adorned with Dalton tiles, like a large and beautiful bath with no water in it, and stately pillars supporting the roof. An unpleasing representation of the phoenix in brown pottery disfigured one wall. There were counters and desks of mahogany and brass, and clerks bent over the desks and walked behind the counters. There was a great clock over an inner doorway. Inquire for the high priest, whispered the phoenix. An attentive clerk in decent black, who controlled his mouth but not his eyebrows, now came towards them. He leaned forward on the counter, and the children thought he was going to say, "What can I have the pleasure of showing you?" like in a draper, instead of which the young man said, "And what do you want?" "We want to see the high priest." "Get along with you," said the young man. An elder man, also decent in black coat, advanced. "Perhaps it's Mr. Blank. Not for worlds would I give the name. He's a Masonic high priest, you know." A porter was sent away to look for Mr. Asterisk. I cannot give his name, and the children were left there to look on and be looked on by all the gentlemen at the mahogany desks. Anthea and Jane thought that they looked kind. The boys thought they stared, and that it was like their cheek. The porter returned with the news that Mr. ... I dare not reveal his name, was out, but that Mr. Here a really delightful gentleman appeared. He had a beard and a kind and merry eye, and each one of the 4 knew at once that this was a man who had kiddies of his own and could understand what you were talking about. Yet it was a difficult thing to explain. "What is it?" he asked. "Mr. He named the name which I will never reveal is out. Can I do anything?" "Inner sanctuary," murmured the phoenix. "I beg your pardon," said the nice gentleman, who thought it was Robert who had spoken. "We have something to tell you," said Cyril, but he glanced at the porter, who was lingering much nearer than he need have done. "This is a very public place." The nice gentleman laughed. "Come upstairs then," he said, and led the way up a wide and beautiful staircase. Anthea says the stairs were of white marble, but I am not sure. On the corner post of the stairs, at the top, was a beautiful image of the phoenix in dark metal, and on the wall at each side was a flat sort of image of it. The nice gentleman led them into a room where the chairs, and even the tables, were covered with reddish leather. He looked at the children inquiringly. "Don't be frightened," he said. "Tell me exactly what you want." "May I shut the door?" asked Cyril. The gentleman looked surprised, but he shut the door. "Now," said Cyril firmly, "I know you'll be awfully surprised and you'll think it's not true and we are lunatics, but we aren't, and it is. Robert's got something inside his Norfolk. That's Robert, he's my young brother. Now don't be upset and have a fit or anything, sir. Of course, I know when you called your shop the Phoenix, you never thought there was one, but there is, and Robert's got it buttoned up against his chest. If it's an old curio in the form of a phoenix, I dare say the board," said the nice gentleman, as Robert began to fumble with his buttons. "It's old enough," said Anthea, "going by what it says, but..." "My goodness gracious," said the gentleman, as the phoenix, with one last wriggle that melted into a flutter, got out of its nest in the breast of Robert and stood up on the leather-covered table. "What an extraordinarily fine bird," he went on. "I don't think I ever saw one just like it." "I should think not," said the phoenix with pardonable pride, and the gentleman jumped. "Oh, it's been taught to speak. Some sort of parrot, perhaps." "I am," said the bird simply, "the head of your house, and I have come to my temple to receive your homage. I am no parrot," its beak curved scornfully. "I am the one and only phoenix, and I demand the homage of my high priest." "In the absence of our manager," the gentleman began, exactly as though he were addressing a valued customer. "In the absence of our manager, I mean. GHT perhaps be able. What am I saying?" He turned pale and passed his hand across his brow. "My dears," he said, "the weather is unusually warm for the time of year, and I don't feel quite myself. Do you know, for a moment I really thought that that remarkable bird of yours had spoken and said it was the phoenix, and, what's more, that I'd believed it." "So it did, sir," said Cyril, "and so did you." "It really, allow me." A bell was rung. The porter appeared. "Mackenzie," said the gentleman, "you see that golden bird?" "Yes, sir." The other breathed a sigh of relief. "It is real, then?" "Yes, sir, of course, sir." "You take it in your hand, sir," said the porter sympathetically, and reached out his hand to the phoenix, who shrank back on toes curved with agitated indignation. "Forbear," it cried. "How dare you seek to lay hands on me?" The porter saluted. "Beg pardon, sir," he said. "I thought you was a bird." "I am a bird, the phoenix." "Of course you are, sir," said the porter. "I see that the first minute, directly I got my breath, sir." "That will do," said the gentleman. "Ask Mr. Wilson and Mr. Sterry to step up here for a moment, please." Mr. Sterry and Mr. Wilson were in their turn overcome by amazement, quickly followed by conviction. To the surprise of the children, everyone in the office took the phoenix at its word, and after the first shock of surprise, it seemed to be perfectly natural to everyone that the phoenix should be alive, and that, passing through London, it should call at its temple. "We ought to have some sort of ceremony," said the nicest gentleman anxiously. "There isn't time to summon the directors and shareholders. We might do that tomorrow, perhaps. Yes, the boardroom would be best. I shouldn't like it to feel we hadn't done everything in our power to show our appreciation of its condescension in looking in on us in this friendly way." The children could hardly believe their ears, for they had never thought that anyone but themselves would believe in the phoenix. And yet everyone did. All the men in the office were brought in by twos and threes, and the moment the phoenix opened its beak, it convinced the cleverest of them, as well as those who were not so clever. Cyril wondered how the story would look in the papers next day. He seemed to see the posters in the streets. Phoenix Fire Office. The Phoenix at its temple. Meeting to welcome it. Delight of the manager and everybody. "Excuse our leaving you a moment," said the nice gentleman, and he went away with the others. And through the half-closed door the children could hear the sound of many boots on stairs, the hum of excited voices explaining, suggesting, arguing, the thumpy drag of heavy furniture being moved about. The phoenix strutted up and down the leather-covered table, looking over its shoulder at its pretty back. "You see what a convincing manner I have," it said proudly. And now a new gentleman came in and said, bowing low, "Everything is prepared. We have done our best at so short a notice. The meeting, the ceremony will be in the boardroom. Will the Honorable Phoenix walk? It is only a few steps, or would it like to be? Would it like some sort of conveyance? My Robert will bear me to the boardroom, if that be the unlovely name of my temple's inmost court. replied the bird. So they all followed the gentleman. There was a big table in the boardroom, but it had been pushed right up under the long windows at one side, and chairs were arranged in rows across the room, like those you have at schools when there is a magic lantern on our Eastern Empire, or on the way we do in the Navy. The doors were of carved wood, very beautiful, with a carved phoenix above. Anthea noticed that the chairs in the front rows were of the kind that her mother so loved to ask the price of in old furniture shops, and never could buy, because the price was always nearly £20 each. On the mantelpiece were some heavy bronze candlesticks and a clock, and on the top of the clock was another image of the phoenix. "Remove that effigy," said the phoenix to the gentlemen who were there, and it was hastily taken down. Then the phoenix fluttered to the middle of the mantelpiece and stood there, looking more golden than ever. Then everyone in the house and the office came in, from the cashier to the women who cooked the clerks' dinners in the beautiful kitchen at the top of the house, and everyone bowed to the phoenix and then sat down in a chair. "Gentlemen," said the nicest gentleman, "we have met here today." The phoenix was turning its golden beak from side to side. "I don't notice any incense," it said, with an injured sniff. A hurried consultation ended in plates being fetched from the kitchen. Brown sugar, sealing wax, and tobacco were placed on these, and something from a square bottle was poured over it all. Then a match was applied. It was the only incense that was handy in the phoenix office, and it certainly booed. Arnett very briskly, and smoked a great deal. "We have met here today," said the gentleman again, "on an occasion unparalleled in the annals of this office. Our respected phoenix—" "Head of the house," said the phoenix in a hollow voice. "I was coming to that. Our respected phoenix, the head of this ancient house, has at length done us the honor to come among us. I think I may say, gentlemen, that we are not insensible to this honor, and that we welcome with no uncertain voice one whom we have so long desired to see in our midst." Several of the younger clerks thought of saying "Hear, hear," but they feared it might seem disrespectful to the bird. "I will not take up your time," the speaker went on, "by recapitulating the advantages to be derived from a proper use of our system of fire insurance. I know, and you know, gentlemen, that our aim has ever been to be worthy of that eminent bird whose name we bear, and who now adorns our mantelpiece with his presence. 3 cheers, gentlemen, for the winged head of the house." The cheers rose, deafening. When they had died away, the phoenix was asked to say a few words. It expressed in graceful phrases the pleasure it felt in finding itself at last in its own temple. And it went on, "You must not think me wanting in appreciation of your very hearty and cordial reception when I ask that an ode may be recited or a choric song sung. It is what I have always been accustomed to." The 4 children, dumb witnesses of this wonderful scene, glanced a little nervously across the foam of white faces above the sea of black coats. It seemed to them that the phoenix was really asking a little too much. "Time presses," said the phoenix, "and the original ode of invocation is long as well as being Greek, and besides, it's no use invoking me when here I am. But is there not a song in your own tongue for a great day such as this?" Absently the manager began to sing, and one by one the rest joined. "Absolute security. No liability. All kinds of property. Insured against fire. Terms most favorable. Expenses reasonable. Moderate rates for annual. Insurance." "That one is not my favorite," interrupted the phoenix, "and I think you've forgotten part of it." The manager hastily began another. "O golden phoenix, fairest bird, the whole great world has often heard of all the splendid things we do. Great phoenix, just to honor you." "That's better," said the bird, and everyone sang. Class 1 for private dwelling house. For household goods and shops allows, provided these are built of brick or stone and tiled and slated thick. Try another verse, said the phoenix further on. And again arose the voices of all the clerks and employees and managers and secretaries and cooks. In Scotland our insurance yields the price of burnt-up stacks in fields. Skip that verse, said the phoenix. Thatched dwellings and their whole contents we deal with, also with their rents. Oh, glorious phoenix, look and see that these are dealt with in class 3. The glories of your temple throng, too thick to go in any song. And we attend, O good and wise, to days of grace and merchandise. When people's homes are burned away, they never have a cent to pay, if they have done as all should do, O Phoenix, and have honored you. So let us raise our voice and sing the praises of the Phoenix King in classes 1 and 2 and 3. Oh, trust to him, for kind is he. I'm sure you're very kind, said the phoenix. And now we must be going. And thank you very much for a very pleasant time. May you all prosper as you deserve to do, for I am sure a nicer, pleasanter spoken lot of temple attendants I have never met and never wish to meet. I wish you all good day. It fluttered to the wrist of Robert and drew the 4 children from the room. The whole of the office staff followed down the wide stairs and filed into their accustomed places, and the 2 most important officials stood on the steps bowing till Robert had buttoned the golden bird in his Norfolk bosom, and he and the 3 other children were lost in the crowd. The 2 most important gentlemen looked at each other earnestly and strangely for a moment, and then retreated to those sacred inner rooms, where they toil without ceasing for the good of the house. And the moment they were all in their places, managers, secretaries, clerks, and porters, they all started, and each looked cautiously round to see if anyone was looking at him. For each thought that he had fallen asleep for a few minutes and had dreamed a very odd dream about the phoenix and the boardroom. And of course, no one mentioned it to anyone else, because going to sleep at your office is a thing you simply must not do. The extraordinary confusion of the boardroom, with the remains of the incense in the PL. 8s would have shown them at once that the visit of the phoenix had been no dream, but a radiant reality. But no one went into the boardroom again that day. And next day, before the office was opened, it was all cleaned and put nice and tidy by a lady whose business asking questions was not part of. That is why Cyril read the papers in vain on the next day and the day after that, because no sensible person thinks his dreams worth putting in the paper, and no one will ever own that he has been asleep in the daytime. The phoenix was very pleased, but it decided to write an ode for itself. It thought the ones it had heard at its temple had been too hastily composed. Its own ode began. For beauty and for modest worth, the phoenix has not its equal on earth. And when the children went to bed that night, it was still trying to cut down the last line to the proper length, without taking out any of what it wanted to say. That is what makes poetry so difficult. Chapter 6, Doing Good. We shan't be able to go anywhere on the carpet for a whole week, though, said Robert. And I'm glad of it, said Jane unexpectedly. Glad, said Cyril, glad. It was breakfast time, and Mother's letter, telling them how they were all going for Christmas to their aunts at Lyndhurst, and how Father and Mother would meet them there, having been read by every one, lay on the table, drinking hot bacon fat with one corner and eating marmalade with the other. Yes, glad, said Jane. I don't want any more things to happen just now. I feel like you do when you've been to 3 parties in a week, like we did at Granny's once, and extras in between, toys and chocks and things like that. I want everything to be just real and no fancy things happening at all. I don't like being obliged to keep things from Mother, said Anthea. I don't know why, but it makes me feel selfish and mean. If we could only get the mater to believe it, we might take her to the jolliest places, said Cyril thoughtfully. As it is, we've just got to be selfish and mean, if it is that, but I don't feel it is. I know it isn't, but I feel it is, said Anthea, and that's just as bad. It's worse, said Robert. If you knew it and didn't feel it, it wouldn't matter so much. That's being a hardened criminal, Father says, put in Cyril, and he picked up Mother's letter and wiped its corners with his handkerchief, to whose color a trifle of bacon fat and marmalade made but little difference. We're going tomorrow anyhow, said Robert. Don't, he added, with a good boy expression on his face. Don't let's be ungrateful for our blessings. Don't let's waste the day in saying how horrid it is to keep secrets from Mother, when we all know Anthea tried all she knew to give her the secret, and she wouldn't take it. Let's get on the carpet and have a jolly good wish. You'll have time enough to repent of things all next week. Yes, said Cyril, let's. It's not really wrong. Well, look here, said Anthea. You know there's something about Christmas that makes you want to be good, however little you wish it at other times. Couldn't we wish the carpet to take us somewhere where we should have the chance to do some good and kind action? It would be an adventure just the same, she pleaded. I don't mind, said Cyril. We shan't know where we're going, and that'll be exciting. No one knows what'll happen. We'd best put on our outers in case. We might rescue a traveler buried in the snow, like St. Bernard dogs with barrels round our necks, said Jane, beginning to be interested. Or we might arrive just in time to witness a will being signed. More tea, please, said Robert. And we should see the old man hide it away in the secret cupboard. And then, after long years, when the rightful heir was in despair, we should lead him to the hidden panel and— Yes, interrupted Anthea. Or we might be taken to some freezing garret in a German town, where a poor little pale, sick child— We haven't any German money, interrupted Cyril. So thats no go. What I should like would be getting into the middle of a war and getting hold of secret intelligence and taking it to the general, and he would make me a lieutenant or a scout or a hussar. When breakfast was cleared away, Anthea swept the carpet, and the children sat down on it, together with the phoenix, who had been especially invited as a Christmas treat, to come with them and witness the good and kind action they were about to do. 4 children and 1 bird were ready, and the wish was wished. Everyone closed its eyes, so as to feel the topsy-turvy swirl of the carpet's movement as little as possible. When the eyes were opened again, the children found themselves on the carpet, and the carpet was in its proper place on the floor of their own nursery at Camden Town. I say, said Cyril, here's a go. Do you think it's worn out? The wishing part of it, I mean, Robert anxiously asked the phoenix. It's not that, said the phoenix, but well, what did you wish? Oh, I see what it means, said Robert with deep disgust. It's like the end of a fairy story in a Sunday magazine. How perfectly beastly. You mean it means we can do kind and good actions where we are. I see. I suppose it wants us to carry coals for the cook or make clothes for the bare heathens. Well, I simply won't, and the last day and everything. Look here, Cyril spoke loudly and firmly. We want to go somewhere really interesting where we have a chance of doing something good and kind. We don't want to do it here, but somewhere else. See, now then. The obedient carpet started instantly, and the 4 children and 1 bird fell in a heap together, and as they fell were plunged in perfect darkness. Are you all there? Said Anthea breathlessly through the black dark. Every one owned that it was there. Where are we? Oh, how shivery and wet it is. Ugh, oh, I've put my hand in a puddle. Has anyone got any matches? Said Anthea hopelessly. She felt sure that no one would have any. It was then that Robert, with a radiant smile of triumph that was quite wasted in the darkness, where of course no one could see anything, drew out of his pocket a box of matches, struck a match and lighted a candle, 2 candles, and every one with its mouth open blinked at the sudden light. "Well done, Bobs," said his sisters, and even Cyril's natural brotherly feelings could not check his admiration of Robert's foresight. "I've always carried them about ever since the Lone Tower day," said Robert with modest pride. "I knew we should want them someday. I kept the secret well, did I?" "Oh, yes," said Cyril with fine scorn. "I found them the Sunday after when I was feeling in your Norfolks for the knife you borrowed off me, but I thought you'd only sneak them for Chinese lanterns or reading in bed by." "Bobs," said Anthea suddenly, "do you know where we are? This is the underground passage, and look there. There's the money and the money bags and everything." By this time, the 10 eyes had got used to the light of the candles, and no one could help seeing that Anthea spoke the truth. "It seems an odd place to do good and kind acts in, though," said Jane. "There's no one to do them to." "Don't you be too sure," said Cyril. "Just round the next turning we might find a prisoner who has languished here for years and years, and we could take him out on our carpet and restore him to his sorrowing friends." "Of course we could," said Robert, standing up and holding the candle above his head to see further off. "Or we might find the bones of a poor prisoner and take them to his friends to be buried properly. That's always a kind action in books, though I never could see what bones matter." "I wish you wouldn't," said Jane. "I know exactly where we shall find the bones, too," Robert went on. "You see that dark arch just along the passage? Well, just inside there." "If you don't stop going on like that," said Jane firmly, "I shall scream and then I'll faint, so now then." "And I will too," said Anthea. Robert was not pleased at being checked in his flight of fancy. "You girls will never be great writers," he said bitterly. "They just love to think of things in dungeons and chains and knobbly bare human bones and—" Jane had opened her mouth to scream, but before she could decide how you began when you wanted to faint, the golden voice of the phoenix spoke through the gloom. "Peace," it said. "There are no bones here except the small but useful sets that you have inside you. And you did not invite me to come out with you to hear you talk about bones, but to see you do some good and kind action." "We can't do it here," said Robert sulkily. "No," rejoined the bird. "The only thing we can do here, it seems, is to try to frighten our little sisters." "He didn't really, and I'm not so very little," said Jane, rather ungratefully. Robert was silent. It was Cyril who suggested that perhaps they had better take the money and go. "That wouldn't be a kind act except to ourselves, and it wouldn't be good, whatever way you look at it," said Anthea, "to take money that's not ours." "We might take it and spend it all on benefits to the poor and aged," said Cyril. "That wouldn't make it right to steal," said Anthea stoutly. "I don't know," said Cyril. They were all standing up now. "Stealing is taking things that belong to someone else and there's no one else. It can't be stealing if—" "That's right," said Robert with ironical approval. "Stand here all day arguing while the candles burn out. You'll like it awfully when it's all dark again and bony." "Let's get out then," said Anthea. "We can argue as we go." So they rolled up the carpet and went. But when they had crept along to the place where the passage led into the topless tower, they found the way blocked by a great stone, which they could not move. "There," said Robert, "I hope you're satisfied." "Everything has two ends," said the phoenix softly, "even a quarrel or a secret passage." So they turned round and went back, and Robert was made to go first with one of the candles, because He was the one who had begun to talk about bones, and Cyril carried the carpet. "I wish you hadn't put bones into our heads," said Jane, as they went along. "I didn't, you always had them. More bones than brains," said Robert. The passage was long, and there were arches and steps and turnings and dark alcoves that the girls did not much like passing. The passage ended in a flight of steps. Robert went up them. Suddenly he staggered heavily back onto the following feet of Jane, and everybody screamed, "Oh, what is it?" "I've only bashed my head in," said Robert when he had groaned for some time. "That's all. Don't mention it, I like it. The stairs just go right slap into the ceiling, and it's a stone ceiling. You can't do good and kind actions underneath a paving stone." "Stairs aren't made to lead just to paving stones as a general rule," said the Phoenix. "Put your shoulder to the wheel." "There isn't any wheel," said the injured Robert, still rubbing his head. But Cyril had pushed past him to the top stair, and was already shoving his hardest against the stone above. Of course, it did not give in the least. "If it's a trapdoor," said Cyril, and he stopped shoving and began to feel about with his hands. "Yes, there is a bolt. I can't move it." By a happy chance Cyril had in his pocket the oil can of his father's bicycle. He put the carpet down at the foot of the stairs, and he lay on his back, with his head on the top step and his feet straggling down among his young relations, and he oiled the bolt till the drops of rust and oil fell down on his face. One even went into his mouth, open, as he panted with the exertion of keeping up this unnatural position. Then he tried again, but still the bolt would not move. So now he tied his handkerchief, the one with the bacon fat and marmalade on it, to the bolt, and Robert's handkerchief to that, in a reef knot which cannot come undone however much you pull, and indeed gets tighter and tighter the more you pull it. This must not be confused with a granny knot, which comes undone if you look at it. And then he and Robert pulled, and the girls put their arms round their brothers and pulled too, and suddenly the bolt gave way with a rusty scrunch, and they all rolled together to the bottom of the stairs, all but the Phoenix, which had taken to its wings when the pulling began. Nobody was hurt much because the rolled-up carpet broke their fall, and now, indeed, the shoulders of the boys were used to some purpose, for the stone allowed them to heave it up. They felt it give. Dust fell freely on them. "Now then," cried Robert, forgetting his head and his temper, "push all together. 1, 2, 3. The stone was heaved up. It swung up on a creaking, unwilling hinge, and showed a growing oblong of dazzling daylight, and it fell back with a bang against something that kept it upright. Everyone climbed out, but there was not room for everyone to stand comfortably in the little paved house where they found themselves. So when the Phoenix had fluttered up from the darkness, they let the stone down, and it closed like a trapdoor, as indeed it was. You can have no idea how dusty and dirty the children were. Fortunately, there was no one to see them but each other. The place they were in was a little shrine, built on the side of a road that went winding up through yellow-green fields to the topless tower. Below them were fields and orchards, all bare boughs and brown furrows, and little houses and gardens. The shrine was a kind of tiny chapel with no front wall, just a place for people to stop and rest in and wish to be good. So the Phoenix told them. There was an image that had once been brightly colored, but the rain and snow had beaten in through the open front of the shrine, and the poor image was dull and weather-stained. Under it was written, "St. Jean de Luz, Prise pour nous." It was a sad little place, very neglected and lonely, and yet it was nice, Anthea thought, that poor travelers should come to this little rest house in the hurry and worry of their journeyings and be quiet for a few minutes and think about being good. The thought of St. Jean de Luz, who had, no doubt in his time, been very good and kind, made Anthea want more than ever to do something kind and good. "Tell us," she said to the Phoenix, "what is the good and kind action the carpet brought us here to do?" "I think it would be kind to find the owners of the treasure and tell them about it," said Cyril. "And give it them all," said Jane. "Yes, but whose is it?" "I should go to the first house and ask the name of the owner of the castle," said the golden bird, and really the idea seemed a good one. They dusted each other as well as they could and went down the road. A little way on they found a tiny spring, bubbling out of the hill, sighed and falling into a rough stone basin surrounded by draggled heartstung ferns, now hardly green at all. Here the children washed their hands and faces and dried them on their pocket handkerchiefs, which always, on these occasions, seem unnaturally small. Cyril's and Robert's handkerchiefs, indeed, rather undid the effects of the wash. But in spite of this, the party certainly looked cleaner than before. The first house they came to was a little white house with green shutters and a slate roof. It stood in a prim little garden, and down each side of the neat path were large stone vases for flowers to grow in, but all the flowers were dead now. Along one side of the house was a sort of wide veranda, built of poles and trellis work, and a vine crawled all over it. It was wider than our English verandas, and Anthea thought it must look lovely when the green leaves and the grapes were there. But now there were only dry, reddish-brown stalks and stems, with a few withered leaves caught in them. The children walked up to the front door. It was green and narrow. A chain with a handle hung beside it, and joined itself quite openly to a rusty bell that hung under the porch. Cyril had pulled the bell, and its noisy clang was dying away before the terrible thought came to all. Cyril spoke it. "My hat," he breathed. "We don't know any French." At this moment the door opened. A very tall, lean lady, with pale ringlets like whitey brown paper or oak shavings, stood before them. She had an ugly gray dress and a black silk apron. Her eyes were small and gray and not pretty, and the rims were red as though she had been crying. She addressed the party in something that sounded like a foreign language, and ended with something which they were sure was a question. Of course, no one could answer it. "What does she say?" Robert asked, looking down into the hollow of his jacket where the phoenix was nestling. But before the phoenix could answer, the whitey brown lady's face was lighted up by a most charming smile. "You are far the England," she cried. "I love so much the England. Mais and tres donc tous. Enter, then enter all. One essuies his feet on the carpet." She pointed to the mat. "We only wanted to ask." "I shall say you all that what you wish," said the lady. "Enter only." So they all went in, wiping their feet on a very clean mat, and putting the carpet in a safe corner of the veranda. "The most beautiful days of my life," said the lady, as she shut the door, "did pass themselves in England, and since long time I have not heard an English voice to repeal me the past." This warm welcome embarrassed everyone but most the boys, for the floor of the hall was of such very clean red and white tiles, and the floor of the sitting room so very shiny, like a black looking-glass, that each felt as though he had on far more boots than usual and far noisier. There was a wood fire, very small and very bright, on the hearth, neat little logs laid on brass fire dogs. Some portraits of powdered ladies and gentlemen hung in oval frames on the pale walls. There were silver candlesticks on the mantelpiece, and there were chairs and a table, very slim and polite, with slender legs. The room was extremely bare, but with a bright foreign bareness that was very cheerful in an odd way of its own. At the end of the polished table, a very un-English little boy sat on a footstool in a high-backed, uncomfortable-looking chair. He wore black velvet and the kind of collar, all frills and lacy, that Robert would rather have dyed than wear. But then the little French boy was much younger than Robert. "Oh, how pretty," said everyone. But no one meant the little French boy, with the velvety short knickerbockers and the velvety short hair. What everyone admired was a little Christmas tree, very green, and standing in a very red little flower pot, and hung round with very bright little things made of tinsel and colored paper. There were tiny candles on the tree, but they were not lighted yet. "But yes, is it not that it is genteel?" said the lady. "Sit down you then, and let us see." The children sat down in a row on the stiff chairs against the wall, and the lady lighted a long, slim red taper at the wood flame, and then she drew the curtains and lit the little candles, and when they were all lighted the little French boy suddenly shouted, "Bravo, ma tante! Oh, que gentle!" and the English children shouted, "Hooray!" Then there was a struggle in the breast of Robert, and out fluttered the phoenix, spread his gold wings, flew to the top of the Christmas tree, and perched there. "Ah, catch it then," cried the lady. "It will itself burn, your genteel parakeet." "It won't," said Robert, "thank you." And the little French boy clapped his clean and tidy hands. But the lady was so anxious that the phoenix fluttered down and walked up and down on the shiny walnut wood table. "Is it that it talks?" asked the lady. "And the foe?" Nix replied in excellent French. It said, "Parfaitement, madame." "Oh, the pretty parakeet," said the lady. "Can it say still of other things?" And the phoenix replied, this time in English, "Why are you sad so near Christmas time?" The children looked at it with one gasp of horror and surprise, for the youngest of them knew that it is far from manners to notice that strangers have been crying, and much worse to ask them the reason of their tears. And of course, the lady began to cry again, very much indeed, after calling the phoenix a bird without a heart, and she could not find her handkerchief, so Anthea offered hers, which was still very damp and no use at all. She also hugged the lady, and this seemed to be of more use than the handkerchief, so that presently the lady stopped crying, and found her own handkerchief and dried her eyes, and called Anthea a cherished angel. "I am sorry we came just when you were so sad," said Anthea, "but we really only wanted to ask you whose that castle is on the hill." "Oh, my little angel," said the poor lady, sniffing. "Today and for hundreds of years the castle is to us, to our family. Tomorrow it must that I sell it to some strangers, and my little Henry, who ignores all, he will not have never the land's paternal. But what will you? His father, my brother, Mr. the Marquis, has spent much of money, and it the must, despite the sentiments of familial respect, that I admit that my sainted father he also. How would you feel if you found a lot of money, hundreds and thousands of gold pieces?" asked Cyril. The lady smiled sadly. "Ah, one has already recounted to you the legend," she said. "It is true that one says that it is long time, oh, but long time, one of our ancestors has hid a treasure of gold and of gold and of gold, enough to enrich my little Henry for the life. But all that, my children, it is but the accounts of fays." "She means fairy stories," whispered the phoenix to Robert. "Tell her what you have found." So Robert told, while Anthea and Jane hugged the lady for fear she should faint for joy, like people in books, and they hugged her with the earnest, joyous hugs of unselfish delight. "It's no use explaining how we got in," said Robert, when he had told of the finding of the treasure, "because you would find it a little difficult to understand and much more difficult to believe. But we can show you where the gold is and help you to fetch it away." The lady looked doubtfully at Robert as she absently returned the hugs of the girls. "No, he's not making it up," said Anthea. "It's true, 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 and we are so glad." "You would not be capable to torment an old woman," she said, "and it is not possible that it be a dream." "It really is true," said Cyril, "and I congratulate you very much." His tone of studied politeness seemed to convince more than the raptures of the others. "If I do not dream," she said, Henry come to Manon, and you shall come all with me to Mr. the curate, is it not? Manon was a wrinkled old woman, with a red and yellow handkerchief twisted round her head. She took Henry, who was already sleepy with the excitement of his Christmas tree and his visitors, and when the lady had put on a stiff black cape and a wonderful black silk bonnet, and a pair of black wooden clogs over her black cashmere house boots, the whole party went down the road to a little white house, very like the one they had left, where an old priest, with a good face, welcomed them with a politeness so great that it hid his astonishment. The lady, with her French waving hands and her shrugging French shoulders and her trembling French speech, told the story. And now the priest, who knew no English, shrugged his shoulders and waved his hands and spoke also in French. "He thinks," whispered the phoenix, "that her troubles have turned her brain. What a pity you know no French." "I do know a lot of French," whispered Robert indignantly, "but it's all about the pencil of the gardener's son and the penknife of the baker's niece, nothing that anyone ever wants to say." "If I speak," the bird whispered, "he'll think Hes mad too. Tell me what to say." C'est vrai, monsieur. Venez donc voir," said the phoenix. And then Robert earned the undying respect of everybody by suddenly saying, very loudly and distinctly, "C'est vrai, monsieur, venez donc voir." The priest was disappointed when he found that Robert's French began and ended with these useful words. But at any rate, he saw that if the lady was mad, she was not the only one, and he put on a big beavery hat and got a candle and matches and a spade, and they all went up the hill to the wayside shrine of St. John of Luz. "Now," said Robert, "I will go first and show you where it is." So they prized the stone up with a corner of the spade, and Robert did go first, and they all followed and found the golden treasure exactly as they had left it. And everyone was flushed with the joy of performing such a wonderfully kind acti. "Lon." Then the lady and the priest clasped hands and wept for joy, as French people do, and knelt down and touched the money, and talked very fast and both together. And the lady embraced all the children 3 times each, and called them little garden angels. And then she and the priest shook each other by both hands again, and talked, and talked, and talked, faster and more Frenchy than you would have believed possible. And the children were struck dumb with joy and pleasure. "Get away now," said the phoenix softly, breaking in on the radiant dream. So the children crept away, and out through the little shrine, and the lady and the priest were so tearfully, talkatively happy that they never noticed that the guardian angels had gone. The garden angels ran down the hill to the lady's little house, where they had left the carpet on the veranda, and they spread it out and said, "Home." And no one saw them disappear, except little Henry, who had flattened his nose into a white button against the window glass, and when he tried to tell his aunt, she thought he had been dreaming. So that was all right. "It is much the best thing we've done," said Anthea, when they talked it over at tea time. "In the future we'll only do kind actions with the carpet." "Ahem," said the phoenix. "I beg your pardon," said Anthea. "Oh, nothing," said the bird. "I was only thinking.